an explosion is depicted, causing people to scatter in different directions. Azami Yanagi, holding a crowbar, destroys the zombies, who begin to crumble into dust. He says that until this child is completely safe, we need to hold out a little longer. Then he notices something and reacts. After that, he delivers a powerful blow, cutting down the enemies. Azami Yanagi informs them that now that the place is tidied up, they can slowly move on from here. He then explains that the power he brought back from there might be useful to someone. On the left is Lobelia, the great sage dark elf, in the center stands Irias, the holy half-elf, and on the right is Gentiana, the hero, a man with a capital H. Azami Yanagi says he's fed up with this world and is a samurai from another world. The girl addresses him as Mr. Azami. 3 years have passed since he came to this world, and most of that time was spent as a member of the hero squad, culminating in the defeat of the Demon King. The woman reports finding a safe country with heroes like her interlocutor. The man and his group ask if they can trust the dark elf and the visitor from another world. Azami Yanagi informs Gentia that he won't be of any use in the world he's heading to anyway and hands her his sword. He offers to take the watch for Iris and the tie and pin for Lobelia. The women thank him for this. He says his stomach is empty and he's thirsty, so he should get some rest. He explains that the ring opens subspace and says he won't be using it again. Azami Yanagi reports that the refrigerator is also not working and that the electricity has been out for a long time. He says it looks more like something else. Then he opens the door and says it's blood. He looks at the silhouette of a person at the end of the hallway. Azami Yanagi sees some strange guy and exclaims, "Really?" He says it's not a fake and he's sure of it and then says it's not. The man says he often encountered the undead in that world. He says it's some kind of joke. Azami Yanagi says he needs to run to the first floor now and then he'll think about it. He explains that, on second thought, zombies don't kill, but maybe he's wrong. He sees a man on the floor and says he's dead. He then picks up a bat lying next to the body of the man in the suit. Azami Yanagi touches the glowing doorway with her hand. Numerous wounds and traces of blood are visible among the crowd of zombies outside. Zombies are depicted on the street between multi-story buildings. He says he can't believe this is happening. Azami Yanagi explains what's going on and asks if this is really his original world and if he's really back in Japan. A man is hit in the neck with a bat. Azami Yanagi opens the door. A man covered in stains tries to enter. The man scratches at the door. Azami Yanagi stands against the wall with a bat in her hand and hears a knock on the door. A zombie is trying to get in. Azami Yanagi reports that his phone is fully charged, with 110 missed calls and a ton of emails and social media messages. He asks what happened this month and explains that the message from a junior colleague was sent 5 days after he was transported to another world. He reports that bandits are operating in the city and explains that the terrifying video turned out to be real, asking the mentor if he is safe there. He explains that there was a terrorist attack at the station and asks if the mentor was hurt. He also reports that similar messages are coming in from many people. Now it's clear, the phone doesn't contain any information about what started it all, but oh well. I suppose it only took a few days for phone service throughout Japan to become completely unusable. That's when the world began to change. Azami Yanagi reports that, judging by his messages, he had been holed up inside the apartment for a long time without food supplies and believes his options were limited. Azami Yanagi says he might go there first. He explains that he wanted to put clothes, food, and medicine in a backpack for disguise. He announces that he will come out now and confirms this with the words that he will definitely come out. Then he abruptly opens the door and comes out with a bat in his hands. Azami Yanagi says that now that he knows what this world has become, he won't hold back any longer. He then prepares for battle, holding his bat with concentration and radiating energy. The girl explains that the samurai class is a unique class, mastered only by those from another world, and that it's a stunning class whose attacks are based on melee sword techniques. The woman explains that they are incapable of spells, but Mr. Azami can enhance his basic physical stats with mana. The woman explains that this will work on any object if you touch it with your hands, or it will enhance the characteristics of the object, and advises to try to master this ideally. The girl explains that her head is probably a bit jumbled right now because of classes and magic, but if anything's unclear, feel free to ask. The girl says the guy will learn a lot of new things. Azami Yanagi opens the door and sees a zombie running towards him. Azami Yanagi throws a punch at an opponent while parrying a bat attack. He reports that he had planned to chop off his head, but the bat got slightly dented. He explains that this was due to weak mana conductivity and wonders if it had actually penetrated his head. Azami Yanagi says there is no choice, and she will have to learn a lot of new things. He says that we need to search everything here from the 5th to the 1st floor. Azami Yanagi explains that the skill, always ready for battle, allows him to detect hostile creatures and other signs of danger. He says he hadn't noticed this before because he had deliberately dulled the senses he had honed in another world, but now it seems he can still use it. He says he walked around all 5 floors, but in the entire building he could only sense the presence of zombies. Azami Yanagi reports that, ultimately, there were no survivors. He explains that one can only say that always ready to fight is working as intended, adding that this, perhaps, is still a result, whatever it may be. There is a mass clash of people between buildings on the street, among whom wounded and fallen people are visible, and in the distance smoke rises from a fire or explosion. Azami Yanagi informs them that they need to get to City Hall while avoiding unnecessary zombie encounters, and to do so, they'll have to take the alleys instead of the main road. He explains that he can get by without being overly cautious, but something about his new life in this world worries him. He says that if the survivors see him fighting a horde of zombies, what might they think? Civilians, police, self-defense forces, and government officials. It doesn't matter who sees it, because it's bound to cause trouble one way or another. Azami Yanagi slashes a zombie with a bat while walking down the street. He strikes the undead on the head. The man says that he hasn't seen a single survivor yet and asks if any government members are still alive, and also explains that this world, at least Japan, is currently on the brink of destruction. Azami Yanagi says it would be sad if he were left alone with zombies in this world. He says it's useless now, and they'll have to make a short detour to City Hall, but he's sure it was there, and suggests they go. He explains he needs a sturdy weapon and thinks he can stock up on a crowbar and a handsaw there. Azami Yanagi thinks there might be survivors, though his expectations are not met. He says he thought going through the front door was a bad idea, so he went in through the side entrance, but there are a lot of creepy zombies here too. Azami Yanagi apologizes and states that he would prefer to stock up alone. He then strikes, hitting 2 opponents. He swings his bat at a group of monsters, their heads shattering into dust. Azami Yanagi reports that the night vision skill is also working and thinks he can now slowly look around. He begins to look around. On the ground floor there's an impressive camping area. It says there's plenty of this water. A man shows his hand, from which a whirlwind emanates. Azami Yanagi reports that his subspace can hold about 1,000 kilograms, but that's not as impressive as it sounds. He reports that an adult needs 2 liters of water per day, with an active lifestyle requiring 4 or 5 liters, and that rations are 1.52 kg per day. He explains that he won't always be able to replenish his food and water supplies, so he'll have to consume the bare minimum. Azami Yanagi says they'll have to leave a lot of supplies here, which is a shame, and that if the hero's entire squad were here, they would have carried everything away. He says that further on is the 2nd floor and the tool department. Shown is an aisle with shelves filled with tools and merchandise, with a sign pointing to the 2nd floor. Azami Yanagi says he thinks it'll be stronger than a bat and asks if he should get more of them as spares. He then announces that he has a new weapon now and there's nothing more to do on the 2nd floor. Azami Yanagi notes that it doesn't look like a zombie, the response is very weak. He reports that there is another one very close, this time a zombie. Azami Yanagi says it's a barricade. He runs up the stairs and notices the obstacle. He says these are staff rooms. A vibrant aura emanated from that room. Azami Yanagi approaches the door marked staff room and asks if anyone is there, then announces that she is entering. He says he has something to do and will be back soon. He sits down next to the person under the blanket and places his backpack on the floor. The person under the blanket quietly makes a sound that indicates weakness or discomfort. A woman makes a sound. A man takes her by the shoulder. The woman remains silent. The girl is surprised and says hi. She asks if he's alive. Azami Yanagi replies that he is and says the blood isn't his. He assumes the girl is already locked up and hungry. The girl remains silent. The girl apologizes and says she said something stupid, and he replies it's nothing. She asks if he responded to the distress call, and he says he was just passing by. The girl is silent. Azami Yanagi says he has water too and offers her something to eat. The girl asks if it's really okay. The girl explains that she hasn't eaten anything for 3 days and apologizes for being so greedy. Azami Yanagi reports that zombies are roaming around and asks how things are outside. The girl thanks him for sharing his food with her and offers to do something for him. Azami Yanagi replies that there's no need. The girl says food is worth its weight in gold these days, and they need to try hard to at least find it, because no one would give it away for nothing. He replies that he truly doesn't need anything. The girl explains that if it weren't for him, she wouldn't have a chance of survival. She would either have starved to death or been killed by monsters. Fujikaza identifies herself as a first-year high school student and asks to be called Kaza. Azami Yanagi explains that he's 35 years old and more of an uncle than an older brother, so it's okay to just call him Azami. The girl asks how to thank him and asks why he said his age, 35, so hesitantly. Azami thought to himself, he can't add 3 years spent in another world to that age. He says he has 2 requests. He explains that the first is to take care of himself. He says he doesn't know what she's thinking, but there's no subtext to his requests, although perhaps he's overreacting. The woman reacts with doubt and uncertainty. He tells her that his second request is to find out how Kayed ended up here. Azami Yanagi says she might not want to answer his question, but he has to ask and asks what happened. The girl listens in surprise. She says she will tell. The girl reports that it all started with a video that went viral online. She explains that the video was sent by a hacker from an unknown country, and while there are no comments or signs of editing, people are panicking and conspiracy theories are gaining popularity. The video depicts experiments with zombies. The phone screen announces an emergency evacuation due to a state of emergency. The government has issued a special order, and everyone must evacuate to safe areas. The TV shows news about unrest in Shibuya and the surrounding areas. The girl explains that a couple of days later, in the middle of the night, everyone received an evacuation order, and she and her parents headed to school. On the way there, her mother was bitten by an infected person. By that time, they were already wandering the streets in crowds. Because of this, they decided to go to the nearest department store, where his father was the manager, instead of school. The girl explains that when they started running out of food, her father decided to go down alone to get it. The woman says she was left alone, and many times she thought it was all over, but before he left, her father asked her to survive no matter what. She says that was the last time she saw him. Azami Yanagi says she's sorry, and says it's an unpleasant memory. The woman says Mr. Azami has nothing to apologize for. Azami remains silent. The woman asks a question. Azami Yanagi says you can eat as much as you want, and the equipment is also available, but you just need to be careful with fire and not make too loud noises, since they have good hearing. The girl asks if she can use it. He tells her not to be shy and says that he has already decided to help her. The girl tells Azami Yanagi that if he needs anything, he should definitely let him know, and thanks him. Azami Yanagi says everything is fine. The man explains that Kaidi's words are the result of her father's request, which she took to heart, and that she must survive at any cost. He reveals that this is the request of her father, who never returned, and calls her by name. Azami Yanagi says he has one thing to tell her. The girl says she's listening. He tells her that what he tells her may hurt her, but he has to do it. Azami Yanagi reports that on his way here, he killed all the zombies that he came across, and most likely all the zombies on the first floor are dead. He reports that among them was her father, Kaede, the girl says. Then she reports that it is clear. Azami Yanagi says that those who have become zombies cannot be saved. They are already dead, and finishing them off by smashing their skulls would be considered mercy. He announces that he intends to kill what remains of his mother. He reports that Kaede said her mother was bitten, and he felt the presence of zombies on the 3rd floor, others telling him she's there. He decided to help Kaede, and to do so, he must get rid of any threat. The girl is silent, then says that she understands. He says it's the key to the locker room, the second door from here. That's where his mom is. Azami Yanagi asks if the girl has decided to go with him. The girl apologizes and says if she can. He says it might even be better if the girl sees everything for herself. He explains that she needs to face the truth, and if he's going to help her, this would be the best outcome. Then he and the girl walk down the hallway. The girl says that it is not worth talking about such things during meals, and at the same time says that they both have had enough. The woman says that, just in case, they should barricade the door with some furniture and, for good measure, lock it. The woman asks Kaede what will happen to them now. She says she's afraid she'll go crazy and do something similar to Kaede. He says the girl's mother is so weak. The girl stands at the door, the man stands behind her and closes the door. It conveys the sound of an opening door. Sounds like thunder are heard at the door. The girl reports hearing a rumble. Azami Yanagi announces that he's removed all the barricades and says it's time to open the door by inserting the key into the lock. He then asks the girl to step aside. The girl nods. He turns the doorknob and opens it abruptly, then runs out screaming with a gun in his hands, knocking down several zombies. The girl stands behind him and looks at him. A man falls to the floor in the locker room. He's trying to stay on his feet. His mother approaches Kaede and says, "You're a scammer. She doesn't understand yet." Azami Yanagi reports that Mom is already dead, and what's behind that door is no longer human. The woman reports that he is running. These are already monsters. Azami Yanagi reports that compared to others, she is still well preserved. Without the scar on her hand, she could be mistaken for just a slightly ill woman, but if you look closely, It is reported that it is clear that she is no longer human and that she has clearly become something else entirely. Azami Yanagi says she hopes the girl has finished saying goodbye to her mother. The girl says, "Mom," and looks frightened. He hits the zombie on the head. The girl screams, "Mom." Azami Yanagi grabs the girl by the shoulder and sharply pulls her back, saving her from the falling shadow. He tells her to stay vigilant, explains that if a zombie falls, it doesn't mean it's dead, and adds that with such a head injury, she definitely wouldn't have been able to survive. The woman says her eyes tell her it shouldn't have come to this. She explains this with a serious expression. Azami Yanagi reveals that he actually killed her mother with the first blow and only used the second blow to teach her to be more careful around zombies. He explains that he doesn't care whether she hates him or not because he's already decided to help her. He reports that it was necessary. Azami Yanagi explains that no matter what a zombie was like in life, it must be killed. He says this especially applies to loved ones. Parents, loved ones, or close friends. They are the ones you can't hesitate to kill. The woman tells Mr. Azami that she apologizes for getting angry at him. Azami says he just did it himself and explains that if he can't do something himself, someone else will do it for him. A girl tries to hold the hand of a corpse. The woman says she is happy that Azami Yanagi is by her side and protects her. She says thank you for finishing off his mother. Azami Yanagi announces that he will pick up the girl at dawn and orders her to remain in her room until then and to be quiet. The girl says the latest news she read online said zombies become more aggressive at night. She suggests they set out together at dawn. The man says he has an urgent matter and wants to deal with it as soon as possible. The man says he wants to find other survivors. The girl asks if they really need to go there. Azami Yanagi says he's already killed all the zombies on the way there and asks not to worry, everything will be fine. The girl objects, but he repeats that everything is under control. He explains that it all looks exactly like when she lost her father, probably for Kaede, but this situation doesn't evoke any feelings in him. Azami Yanagi asks if the girl might need anything and says he'll try to find what he can. The girl says she needs him not to leave. The girl says that if this is not possible, then you just need to return safe and sound. He replies that it is fine. Azami Yanagi says he will definitely return safe and sound. He says that it's hard for him to worry about Kaede, but he has to see with his own eyes what's going on in the world and what state the safe zones are in. Azami Yanagi says, let's finish this quickly. He says that even if he makes as much noise as he can, no survivor will see him. He explains that the crowbar is stronger and sharper than his old bat, so he can use it just like the sword from another world, and even cut off a head if he wants. Meanwhile, Azami Yanagi says that for now he will simply continue to move forward, killing zombies. He says it's here. Azami Yanagi jumps from the roof of a building. He reports that some old man entered the school grounds at night, and in normal times he would have been reported immediately, but not this time. Azami Yanagi says she'll start with the gym, explaining that's where people usually gather in extreme situations. There's a zombie attack in the gym. Azami Yanagi says that it is clear that they were actually gathering survivors here, but everything turned out like this. He reports that an outbreak has begun at the school. He explains that the infected are turning into zombies and attacking a living. Azami Yanagi says it's a roof. He says it's clear that someone lived here for a while, but then he turns his head sharply. The girl says that someone lived here. Azami Yanagi explains it was a zombie. He then stabs her, causing the woman to apologize. The next shot shows Azami Yanagi standing next to the woman's body lying on the floor. He says there is no damage, her clothes are not torn, and there are not even any scratches, and says that he may not have noticed the injury on her head. Azami Yanagi explains that in another world, turning a person into a zombie requires transferring a curse to the zombie itself, and the curse spreads throughout the body without causing the host's death. He adds that the curse could also be transferred to an already dead body. He says that, according to Kaede, her mother was bitten only towards nightfall, but she became a zombie at dawn, and the transformation here takes about 6 hours, meaning the curse works quite quickly. He explains that the local zombies are somehow different from the zombies from the other world, the man explains. Azami Yanagi reports that people in this world are turning into zombies much faster, and wonders if it's because their bodies have virtually no mana to resist the curse. He explains that it's better to focus on what he can do now, and that no matter how much he thinks, he reports that, in the end, he did not find any survivors at the school. Azami Yanagi says that this is the skill-enhanced gaze, and explains that it is not the gaze of a zombie, but the gaze of a living person. He says he's watching from City Hall, and in the darkness he might mistake it for a zombie, maybe hide, and figure out what's going on there. He explains that here's City Hall, and next door is the police station. Azami Yanagi says that it's worth putting binoculars in the subspace to be able to see something from the neighboring building. He reports that the survivors on the roof are most likely using one of the lookouts and that they have a lookout on the roof too, meaning there are survivors there too. He explains that the first floor of the city hall is in complete ruins and filled with zombies, and that there are zombies on the roof and upper floors. Azami Yanagi reports that he now knows of other survivors and that this location is still safe. He explains that someone posted that they were going to go to the mayor's office and asks if the junior is still alive. He also reports that the mentor decided to skip school and asks if the video seems creepy. He reports that it would be difficult for a person to get here normally, even if they manage to get through the zombies. The question remains of how to get inside the building. The man reports that it appears the destroyed floor of the city hall and the barricaded police station have been in this state since the first days of the epidemic, and asks how they managed to let survivors into such a fortress. The man explains that there is still hope for passage. Azami Yanagi reports that there are a bunch of zombies lying around with gunshot wounds, which he definitely didn't kill, and the survivors must have already fled the buildings several times. Under these circumstances, it's highly likely that the younger one survived. Azami Yanagi explains that since then, he says that if this place is really that safe, then he will hand Kaidi over to them and thinks that this will be the end of his role as her assistant. Azami Yanagi reports that Kaide is awake. The sound of the door opening. The girl tells him that he is not hurt and turns to him. He says yes. Azami Yanagi asks why the girl didn't go to bed, and she explains that she couldn't fall asleep. The girl says she was worried. Azami Yanagi says that the correct answer is most likely knowing this child. He wonders if she was afraid that he wouldn't return, and that would cut her off. He says that everything will be fine, and the girl thanks him. Azami Yanagi explains that if he can't protect the girl, he will die, and says he doesn't want to die. The girl tells him he shouldn't die and says he must live. He says that she and this child are so similar and that it's not good. He explains that he saw Iris's image in Kaide and that they exude a similar atmosphere around them. The girl says that in another world he often stroked Iris's head. He asks. The girl says she doesn't understand what's happening. Azami Yanagi says that she doesn't seem to mind, but at the same time thinks that she doesn't understand what to do now. The guy explains that you should first set the heat to medium, and when steam rises, reduce it to low. The girl says you should put the marinated mackerel on top to warm it up, and confirms this. Azami Yanagi says that even though he's stocked up on rice and other utensils, he's never cooked in a pot like this before, and the girl really saved him. The girl says it's not her first time cooking, so he can leave it to her. The girl says her mother taught her how to do it and thinks she's pretty good at it. He says, here's how. The girl smiles. A pot of cooked rice is shown with its lid opening. The man says that, thank God, everything worked out. The girl tells Azami Yanagi that they can eat now. Azami Yanagi says he'll portion it out. He explains that ever since he returned from the other world, he's been hungry, fought zombies, found Kadai, and explored the area day and night. He reports that the local cuisine was terrible. The mysterious dried meat was tough and oversalted. The mysterious bread was hard as a rock and left grit on your teeth. The mysterious weed tasted bad but was very nutritious, and the mysterious soup consisted of salt and mint and smelled of blood. Azami Yanagi says that Kaidi doesn't have to wait for him and eat first. The girl explains that this isn't right and that they'll eat together. Azami Yanagi comments that the girl is being overly polite. Then Azami Yanagi wishes him a pleasant meal, and the girl also wishes him a pleasant meal and says, the girl says she has pain. He says he has pain too. Azami Yanagi says that sweet rice melts in your mouth. The taste of warmed, marinated mackerel combined with rendered fat is wonderful. In another world, he didn't have the chance to try Japanese cuisine, and for the first time in 3 years, he experienced this taste again, and his soul sings. The girl says. He says you can drink and eat as much as you want, and asks him not to worry. The girl thanks him and says it was really delicious. She asks if he'll be sleeping too, or if he wants to go somewhere else, noting that he hasn't gone to bed yet and offering to add up what. The guy says he's had enough for today, wants to rest, and explains that he'll sleep in the men's locker room next door and to call him if anything happens. The girl says okay and tells him how. Azami Yanagi opens the door and enters the locker room. He then lies down on the floor and announces that he can finally relax a little. He reports that the video is from Kaidi's story, and the link from the younger man's message is most likely with the same video. He explains that the zombie panic began a couple of days after the video was released, but why so quickly? He explains that, according to the latest information Kaidi read from the internet, Azami Yanagi reports that even if there were infected people on board, they have fast means of transportation, such as airplanes. He explains how outbreaks of the disease could have simultaneously erupted around the world. He says he won't find an answer right now due to a misunderstanding. The man knocks on the door. The girl asks if Mr. Azami is awake. The girl asks him to at least answer before opening the door and asks him not to open the door so abruptly. The man answers. Azami Yanagi apologizes and asks the girl what she wants. The girl says it's possible somehow and asks if they can sleep in the same room. She explains this, a little embarrassed. He says that if this world were completely different, he would try to convince her that she shouldn't do this, but now she is terribly afraid of loneliness. Azami Yanagi says there's nothing to be done and agrees with the girl, who rejoices and says, "Hooray." Azami Yanagi explains too. He says there are no special plans for now, and when they wake up, the girl won't be leaving. The girl says she wanted to ask and clarifies if this is true and whether he will be here when she wakes up. The guy says he wonders if she'll be able to get any sleep now. Azami Yanagi speaks to Mr. Azami. The man asks if he talks in his sleep. The girl says good morning to Mr. Azami and apologizes for waking him. Azami apologizes back. The girl explains that she's already awake and still can't sleep, coughing. Azami looks at her. Azami Yanagi reports that the girl appears to have a fever and asks her to wait a bit. The girl coughs and asks Azami Yanagi to wait and not leave. He says not to be afraid and that he's not going to go down from this floor. In the hallway, a girl is sitting on the floor. The girl is surprised and asks what happened. Azami Yanagi says she was doing something in the next room. The girl says she can walk on her own, but Azami Yanagi explains that it's dangerous for her to move around now. The girl says it's Mr. Azami and asks how he is. Azami says he found some bedding nearby so the girl can rest well and asks how she is. He explains that he probably should have brought a futon or a mattress. The girl says that. The woman says she's terrified of even leaving the floor and wonders if she should have said she was lucky to have found bed linen. Azami Yanagi explains that an old man like him, with powers from another world, could easily move even a bed. The girl says she wanted to ask something before going to bed, but couldn't bring herself to ask, and he asks what exactly she wanted to ask. The man explains that his parents died in a car accident a long time ago and asks if they're okay. The girl says it's clear now. Azami Yanagi apologizes for the rude question. Azami Yanagi tells her not to worry and says she can ask him anything. The girl says that Mr. Azami is very kind. He says this. Azami Yanagi says he's kind and wonders what that means. He explains that in another world, members of the same race could doubt each other and sometimes abandon comrades to certain death, even killing relatives. Azami Yanagi explains that there are such people in that world. He says that kindness isn't his thing and that the other guy is mistaken. The girl says that Mr. Azami is so kind and asks if he'll leave. He suggests they go to bed, to which the girl agrees. Azami Yanagi remains silent, then reveals that he is not kind. The girl is silent and says "foo-foo," making a sleep sound. The girl says she's awake. Azami Yanagi asks if she's awake. The girl makes a sound, "ma, ma, ma." He says he reheated the leftover rice the girl cooked yesterday and asks what it is. The girl says it really is much better. Azami Yanagi says he's added some green tea to her food, which is good for digestion, and suggests she try to eat it, and if she wants anything else, he'll get it. The girl thanks him and starts talking, but Azami Yanagi explains he couldn't find any medication nearby. He tells her that they had to go outside yesterday because they had to do something, but he doesn't want them to put themselves in danger. The girl explains that she doesn't like him going outside at all, but she still understands. The story continues that her father never came back to her, so Azami Yanagi explains that from Katie's perspective, her behavior appears to be forcing him to risk himself for supplies and then taking a cut. He explains that, from his perspective, Katie's behavior is unreasonable, but in their situation, it's a necessary risk if they want to survive. He apologizes and asks if he made the girl angry, to which she replies, no. He then explains that they talked about going outside and the problem will go away if he goes out to do his business. He says that he has already decided to help her and that this is important because Azami Yanagi offers breakfast and helps the girl out of bed. The girl says everything is fine and that she can get up on her own. At the table, the girl calls Azami Yanagi very kind and he informs her that breakfast is already getting cold. The girl says that green tea is quite tasty. He says that it is delicious. A man screams in surprise or pain. Azami Yanagi delivers a powerful kick to the man in the suit, sending him flying backwards. The man falls to the ground, surrounded by many bodies. He speaks perfectly and agrees to remove the cars at the girl's suggestion. He explains that he couldn't leave for a long time because Kaze begged him to stay with her, and only when she began to move more easily was he able to raise the issue again. The girl repeats her request to stay with her a little longer. Yana Azami. Azami Yanagi explains that his primary goal is to get Kaede to the shelter safely. He explains that he was considering using a car, but to do so, he needs to get rid of the zombies and other vehicles blocking their path. He explains that the plan was to clear the way by moving the cars closer to the edge, but that proved problematic. He says that, frankly, he'd just like to throw the cars as far away as possible, but that could trigger an explosion, and that's too dangerous. Azami Yanagi says that now is not the time to attract attention with unnecessary noise, so he has only one option: to carefully move them to the side of the road, one by one. The man says that someday he will get rid of them so that they will not return. He stands with a sword, surrounded by light. Azami Yanagi says we need to come quickly. He also says, come on. He announces that a new batch of zombies will arrive here very soon, and this will add a natural feel to the place. He explains that he tried to make everything look as natural as possible. Azami Yanagi reports that the next target is a car. He chooses the one that looks the most durable and fills it with gasoline from other cars. A car hits people on the road. He says they will check it in practice. Azami Yanagi says it'll be a little busier here when he takes Kazde, but they'll definitely be able to get through the zombie horde. He explains that he's cleared the road and found a car. Now they need to park it closer to the department store, and that you'll need food and other supplies. He says that now we need to go to the bike shop and collect everything we need for the first contact with the shelter. Azami Yanagi reports that he spent the rest of the night in one of the apartments that was next to the city hall, and that it would be better to contact them during the day. He tells them that Kaede made them onigiri with green tea chunks, and while he's eating, he can think. He explains that the main thing is that they accept Kaede and says he doesn't care whether the survivors let them into their shelter. The woman says that in such a world, not everyone will agree to live by the old ways, but that doesn't mean she won't be treated harshly. The man says that a broken man may have entered this department store before him. The woman explains that it doesn't matter how much food they can offer if it means something to Cade. Azami Yanagi says he will find out everything at tomorrow's meeting. There are no speech bubbles in the image, only stained clothing. No one speaks or acts. A man puts on gloves and zips up his jacket. Azami Yanagi announces that she'll replace the bloody shirt with a biker jacket from the store, explaining that the blood won't show up on the black one, making it harder to stain, and most importantly, she wants to present herself well, which the shirt won't do. Then Azami Yanagi says it's time to go. He explains that it looks like such a small hole, but it can accommodate such dimensions. He explains that he chose a bike for his first encounter with the survivors for several reasons, one of which was the ability to wear a helmet without raising suspicion. Azami Yanagi reports that these people can still pose a threat, and it's best not to show your face to them ahead of time. He explains that at such times a helmet can be worn simply for extra protection, but it's still more appropriate for a person wearing a helmet on a bike than on two legs. He reports that there should be a lot of weapons at the police station, some of which could have been moved to City Hall, and if something goes wrong, there's a good chance they'll start shooting at him. He hopes it won't come to that. Azami Inagi says that this way he can at least show them that he is not a zombie, but a person who knows how to ride a bike, and explains that if something does go wrong, he can quickly leave without revealing his identity. A man races down the street on a motorcycle. He suddenly draws his sword and prepares to fight the approaching people. The man notices something ahead. A man delivers a sharp blow with his hand. The man reports that his head flies off. Azami Yanagi slams his bat into a group of opponents, sending them flying and causing an explosion of blood. He feels someone watching from above and reports that it must be the guards from City Hall. He explains that they've organized a night patrol, but they remain vigilant during the day, which is to be expected. Azami Yanagi says to be careful with this. The man explains that it's on the roof under the second floor and points toward the police station. The man says he's a refugee and tells them there is a ladder at the police station that they need to climb. Azami Yanagi reports that it is a rope ladder attached to the police station window and confirms that it is as he thought. Zombies react most strongly to the human voice. A living person to them is like a piece of meat to a hungry dog. The girl screams. Azami Yanagi explains that at this time, people on the street are making their way to the stairs near the police station, meaning that the man from City Hall is attracting zombies with his screams. He explains that zombies, of course, can't climb the stairs, calling this a rather logical move. He informs them that he's still being watched, and it is better not to stand out too much. Then he grabs the rope tightly. Azami Yanagi says there's not much time left and asks him to wait. The man yells for him to grab onto her. The man grabs Azami Yanagi's hand. The man asks if he is okay and if he is hurt. He says that he is fine. The man says it's a great job. Azami Yanagi thanks him for his help and agrees. He says he heard that survivors are hiding here. Sugumi Oda explains that the information was taken from the internet and says that they are safe here. Sugumi Oda explains that he is the head of this section and asks for his name. Azami Yanagi is silent. The original author, Habanero, states that his name is Habanero and that he is the creator of the original. He expresses sincere gratitude for your interest in the work. A middle-aged man who returns from another world becomes unrivaled in an apocalyptic world, Habanero explains. A middle-aged man, returning from another world, reports that he is becoming unrivaled in an apocalyptic world and had been struggling to decide on a manga genre for a long time, but decided to combine several options and do it at the highest level. He explains that he read novels that combined several genres and asked owls. Azami Yanagi says he doesn't intend to kill the girl because he needs her. The girl says she doesn't understand why he's doing it. Sugumi Oda says he is the head of this section and asks for the other person's name. He says his name is he. Azami Yanagi says they'll be meeting. The man with the mustache explains that there's a hint of hostility in the police officer's gazes, and the officer in the cap says they're probably just being cautious. He notices the guard's increased wariness. One of the guards says that this is how their acquaintance will have to begin and asks him to take off his clothes. The second guard explains that Yanagi means Azami Yanagi says, "Pfft." The man says he's serious. He apologizes for laughing and says he can examine him as much as he wants, as it's a necessary checkup. The man notices that Yanagi is in good shape and asks what he did before. Yanagi says he'll try to get it done quickly. Azami Yanagi explains that he's been working out at the gym on weekends, but would appreciate it if they stopped pressuring him. The man, with a questioning expression, explains that it all turned out to be a misunderstanding. Azami Yanagi says that now he doesn't have to worry about. He says he won't cause any problems and says he has no wounds or anything abnormal. The man greets him and allows him to greet him again, to which he replies, "Yeah." The officer informs Azami Yanagi that if he doesn't mind, he should hand over his weapons and luggage for now, and then the officer will show him their hideout. Azami Yanagi says he will do so. Azami Yanagi explains that based on what happened, he can tell what. He says it's no problem for him. The man says his name is simply Oda. The man explains that he can bet they're the same age and asks him not to force himself to use formalities like, "Sir." He asks how many people are there. Azami Yanagi thanks the man for making his life easier, explains that he hasn't addressed anyone politely in a long time, so it's difficult for him, and asks how old the man is. The man replies that he's 35, not counting the years he spent in the other world. Azami Yanagi replies that he reports that there are about 20 refugees in this building, and another 10 are in the city hall. The man says that they are the same age after all and suggests returning to his interlocutor's question. Azami Yanagi reports that they positioned the survivor so that they couldn't reach him, continued to attract zombies to City Hall, and at the last minute he himself showed up and helped Oda, noting good teamwork. The man says it's clear and that Azami Yanagi came up with a good idea. He says he's just doing what he can and asks if the other person thinks otherwise. The man reports that the police have occupied the second, fourth floors and the roof, and that refugees are living on the third floor. They still have rooms available, so they can choose any. The man. The girl cries out to the mentor, asking if he's been alive all this time. She repeats the word, mentor, several times. The mentor stands with his arms outstretched as the girl throws herself into his arms. Azami Yanagi explains that it means the girl took him away. The girl tells Azami Yanagi that he's Yuki and remains silent. The girl cries and says Azami Yanagi's name. The girl clings tightly to Azami Yanagi. The man asks if Yukinoshita is the girl's boyfriend. He explains that he was her mentor at work and couldn't have imagined that she was still alive. The girl says he shouldn't say that and accuses him of not showing up for work and not responding to messages. The man says that since he sees they know each other well, he can safely confide in Yanagi, Yukinoshita, and asks what he thinks. Azami Yanagi explains that he'll tell his mentor everything, and Yukinoshita says fine. The girl ponders how to justify her absence. He says that if he doesn't do this, the mentor might disappear again. The man says he'll find out what all these different things were, and the boy asks Yuki not to drag it out so much. There is no one in the corridor. Azami Yanagi says he apologizes and is guilty for not contacting her. The girl sits silently, arms crossed. The woman says she wants to believe that he really has a serious mentor and accepts this answer. He says that he was really very busy. She started demanding that he kneel before her, even brought tears, so he just resigned himself and wondered where everything went. Azami Yanagi says he's glad Yuki is alive and that he was worried about her, and confirms this. Yuki says she only came here because she read his letter and remained silent. The man explains that the mentor has become somewhat abrupt and seems indifferent to what the mentor replies. He says he's honest and really wanted Yuki to survive. He spent 3 years in a world where people die in droves, and resignation has become a habit, but some part of him has resigned himself to the fact that this might not happen. The girl says that, most likely. The girl says he read her message, where she wrote that she was heading to the city hall, and asks why he didn't respond. Azami Yanagi says it seems he screwed up. He says that before bringing her here, he had to check if it was safe, and that when it came to the fact that he needed to go to Oda and discuss a plan to save the girl, she reluctantly let him go. The man says that the work is good and asks if the guy will use. According to Yuki, they periodically replenish supplies, and to this day they are distributed equally among everyone. Azami Yanagi reports that women remain in the building and are not at risk, and work is distributed among the survivors based on their gender and other abilities, with women doing cleaning and laundry. The woman says she wants to talk to Odai and apologizes. He explains that if he brings Kazu here, there won't be any problems, and says that he himself couldn't find anything strange, and since Yuki came here, there haven't been any particular conflicts. The woman invited. Azami Yanagi says he came here to make sure this shelter is safe. The man explains that the shelter is safe, but he can't find the words to say it better and tries to help somehow. He tells her that he left a girl he took under his protection somewhere and explains that, roughly speaking, he's only here to see if she can survive. He says he wants to bring this child here and apologizes, asking if he can bring her here. Then adds, Azami Yanagi says she won't be staying here for long anyway. The man remains silent. The man explains that if one of the first survivors under their wing speaks of this place that way, then all their efforts were worth it, and confirms that Yukinoshita said so. He says that if he claims to bring her himself, then he has no reason to refuse her. The man says that if they both believe in the goal and are unharmed, then they will be responsible for their further safety, and whether or not to leave this place is Yanagi's decision. Azami Yanagi says he will and thanks him, admitting he owes him one. The man ponders what Oda wanted to say and notes that his sad gaze seemed to burn a hole in his head. The man says he accepted Oda's offer, and after this conversation, he accepted. Night, police station. In the darkened room, he looked at the ceiling. Azami Yanagi says he doesn't want to spend the morning in the central room, which is closest to the stairs, but he continues to keep an eye on anyone passing by his room just in case, and according to Yuki, there's nothing to worry about. Azami Yanagi explains that he owes them a favor, so he decided to help with. In the upper right-hand corner, there's a knock on the door. He tells Yuki to come in. Yuki explains that she's new here, so only he could have let her in, and asks how he knew it was her. The girl says it's best not to waste the flashlight's battery, so she'll turn it off if the guy doesn't mind, to which Azami Yanagi agrees. The girl says the mentor will leave him again tomorrow, and Azami Yanagi confirms this. The girl explains that it would be better to. The girl explains that even if they manage to reach Kaze and find a safe route to City Hall, their luck could run out at any moment, and the mentor considers it a success that they were able to reach a safe place. Azami Yanagi reports seeing this countless times before, survivors dying right before his eyes, just trying to get here, and just as he tried to help them, the next moment they were dead. He says he's seen it again and again. The girl says she's overcome with fear at the thought of suffering the same fate, and as she's climbing the stairs, one of the infected grabs her foot and tears off her sneaker. The man says he still can't forget that day and calls the girl Yuki. Azami Yanagi says the mentor isn't afraid. He explains that he's sure that not only Yuki, but also other fictional characters live in the same fear of zombies. He says, it makes me feel guilty and unbearable, and then I start talking. The man says he's right and he's not afraid, and the girl says Azami Yanagi says he'll open up to his interlocutor and speak frankly. Perhaps this will ease his guilt a little. The man uses the word mentor. The girl tells the mentor that he is too cold-blooded, and yet Azami Yanagi reports that Yuki's words had been running through his head until dawn. He says they'll move on. The text says the next day, 9 a.m. He reports that 2 earthquake response vehicles, which they slightly modified for supply runs, are currently parked in the station's garage, and explains that the vehicles are durable, easy to run over zombies, and have high ground clearance, making them easy to repair. Azami Yanagi says that if the gear is so safe, then he doesn't need it, and asks if that's true. The man explains that it's difficult to move in it. The man says that there's no such thing as too much protection, and that it will make foraging for supplies safer, and asks him to try to be patient. Azami Ya. He says that if he puts them on, the ODA squad will start guarding him excessively, but they might come in handy and he'll give them to Cleda. The man says that's how they move out. He explains that there's a radio at the police station with which they can. 2 trucks are moving along the road. The sounds of their engines accompany their movement. Azami Yanagi says the sound of the car will only attract more zombies, and asks what will happen if they can't knock the zombies off their tail. The man says that would be the worst possible outcome. The man explains that they were moving along a predetermined route and hitting any zombies they encountered along the way, while he announces that there are 2 minutes left and they need to act quickly. He explains that, on his command, a squad of police officers immediately exited the car, armed with axes and small arms in protective gear. Azami Yanagi explains that pistols make too much noise and are used as a last resort. They are used in teams of two, one holds the zombie down, and the other finishes it off with an axe. The opponents are zombies, so fighting one-on-one is unsafe. He reports that the police undergo special training. He reports that upon his arrival, he used his skill to detect one zombie in the building, but he couldn't tell the others about it and could only tell them to be careful and watch their plan unfold. He says he's glad they succeeded. The men explain that the police quickly cleared it out. Azumi Yanagi says they quickly opened the gate and drove their cars in. A man lifts the gate. A man in a police uniform turns to another man. The guy reports that before they managed to close the gate, several zombies followed them, preventing them from reaching the truck bed. The man explains that with each swing of the axe, they managed to eliminate at least one zombie. Azami Yanagi says he thought he'd have to intervene if the situation escalated, but it seems there's no need. The man reports that everyone got out of the car and no traces of zombies were found in the building. He says that there are 9 2-liter bottles of water in this box, and he needs to pretend that it is hard for him while he sighs. Azami Yanagi reports that this was the last box for the day and commends them for their good work. He says they need to clear the exit and drag the bodies to the wall, then open the gate and remove them. The man orders them to push out. Azami Yanagi explains that everything is business as usual. The man asks if he's really going to go there. He explains that he's just doing what he can. Azami Yanagi says yes. The man says the infected don't scare him at all, and that if there was at least one other person like him in the shelter, things would be easier for them. He says it's clear, and that's where the conversation ends. The only sound was Oda's radio, and they spent the rest of the journey in silence. The guy says he doesn't know when they'll be leaving. The man explains he'll try to pick a nice day and drive straight to them. The man says he tried to leave as quickly as possible after that, and the guy says he heard only a sad voice behind him. Alone, he wandered after the girl. To be continued. Azami Yanagi reports returning to the supermarket on a rainy night. He tells them that before contacting the survivors in the shelter, he left the car in one of the parking spaces near the supermarket, and now it needs to be moved closer to the main entrance. He asks if Kaede is still safe. The man explains that it's best not to give them any reason to wonder. Azami Yanagi reports that he's been gone for 2 whole days, and explains that he knew all along that he'd be gone for a few days. He explains that he's wondering if Kazai's gotten better or if her cold has gotten worse, and why he's just worrying unnecessarily. Then Azami Yanagi strikes. He reports that the barricades he set up on the 2nd and 3rd floors appear to be intact, and no foreign auras or zombies are visible, and Kleda's aura is also absent. Azami Yanagi says she appears to be alive and harmless. He then asks if Kaede is there. A girl from behind the door replies that it's Mr. Azami. The girl says, "Hey." He stands in front of the girl. The girl says, "Welcome back, Mr. Azami." The girl asks if Azami Yanagi is hurt and if he's okay. Azami Yanagi explains that he's fine, but he's soaking wet, so he asks her not to get so close to him, adding that he's not used to this. The girl says she's okay, and that's all. He says there's no need to worry about it. The girl says it would be bad if he caught a cold. He explains that he won't catch a cold even if he's soaking wet all day. Azami Yanagi reveals that he has never gotten sick since he acquired this skill in another world, and explains that he has one skill he can use even in front of witnesses: negative effect neutralization. He announces that he is entering. Azami Yanagi informs her that the girl had some spare clothes and offers to change, as she too had recently gotten wet. The girl wonders where he got the set, explains that she found it by chance while she was out running errands, and hopes the clothes fit. He says the water is very hot and asks to be careful. The girl explains that it would be better to make coffee, but he asks if she should get the coffee. The girl says that she didn't mean it that way. The girl tells Mr. Azami that at one point she thought he wouldn't come back after all. Azami says he said he'd come back even if he was gone for a few days. The girl asks him not to think she's blaming him. Azami Yanagi says the offer still stands and asks if the girl really said she'd do something. The girl says it's wonderful and she's very happy. Azami Yanagi calls the girl Kadede, and the girl replies yes. The girl says she doesn't understand what's happening. The woman announces she's pregnant. The girl wishes Azami good night, and Azami replies, "Good night." In the next panel, Azami is lying on the floor saying, "Good night." Azami Yanagi explains that first, the road needs to be cleared so that Keze can easily reach the main entrance where the car is parked. Then all obstacles need to be removed, scattered goods and overturned shelves. In addition, new zombies need to be disposed of, and the corpses of old ones need to be removed. He says that, so to speak, the path from the stairs to the car is clear for now. He says he'll leave the emergency exit open, then explains further. Zombie tells Azami Yanagi he thinks he'll do, but Azami Yanagi remains silent. Zombie tells him to come here quickly. He hits a man on the head with a metal rod. The man is hit hard, and blood spurts from his head. Azami Yanagi reports that he came down the stairs and saw a body lying below. He then says that the man's body is unconscious or dead. He says it's time to keep his promises. The girl says she'd like to at least prepare mentally. She asks if he should prepare mentally, and he replies that he thinks it wouldn't hurt. The girl repeats the question, expressing doubt. Azami Yanagi tells her to hold her hands out in front of her, palms facing up. The girl asks what it is and agrees to do so. The girl says it's Mr. Azami and expresses surprise. He remains silent and looks at her hand. Azami Yanagi tells people to hold on tight and not drop it. He explains that most Japanese have seen a black, heavy pistol, but few have actually held one. He says it's a revolver that fires rubber bullets and explains that it can't kill, but it can hurt. The girl says he'll kill this zombie and explains that the power to choose who lives and who dies now rests in these little hands. The text says to be continued. Azami Yanagi asks if she should do it, and the girl says that she indeed should and explains that she knows how to use a gun. He tells her that the solution to the impending threat is a bullet and orders her to aim at the zombie and then pull the trigger. The girl says he's getting up and advises her to calm down and aim for the head. A girl says hi. A man in a suit approaches the girl. The girl holds a gun and points it at the man. The man, his face distorted, screams. The girl clutches the gun in her hand. Azami Yanagi asks what's wrong. The girl says she can't and asks Azami Yanagi to help. Then Azami Yanagi suddenly kicks the girl. He says he'll take the gun. The girl says okay, and then he takes the gun from her hand. The man watches the girl leave. Azami Yanagi reveals that it was just an imitation and apologizes to Kaede. He tells her that eventually he'll give her real bullets and that she must learn to defend herself. The man looks at another man who stands with his head bowed and his eyes closed. Azami Yanagi delivers a powerful punch to the man's head, causing blood and parts of his face to fly off. He says he just wanted to rid the girl of her fear of zombies, but she replies that she completely failed. He says it's a good thing they didn't leave it for the last day. The top right image states that it hasn't stopped raining since that day. Below, Azami Yanagi explains that Kazele continued to encounter zombies. The image shows 3 characters ready for battle. He explains that perhaps something inside Kaede prevents her from killing a creature that was originally human, and that such behavior is perfectly natural for ordinary people. But for the good girl, Kaede, it's all unbearable. Kaede was never able to pull the trigger. In the right panel, Azami Yanagi states that if she wants to survive in this world, such feelings are nothing more than a hindrance. In the left panel, a girl calls Azami Yanagi by name, and he says he hopes she'll be able to kill zombies one day. The girl is silent, then says yes. The rain has finally stopped, making it a perfect day for a trip. A man looks out over the city. Azami Yanagi asks if the girl is ready. The girl puts her hair in a ponytail. The girl's voice sounds enthusiastic. Her hair is tied in a ponytail, and she has a backpack on her back. Azami Yanagi reports that he initially wanted Kaede to wear the protection Oda gave him, but they decided against it, and that Kaede only wore the Kevlar fiber portion of the talisman, and to protect herself as best she could, she put on a jacket over her hoodie. The girl says she doesn't have time, but she can do something and explains that it's not much. He says he doesn't mind and asks what she wants to do. The girl stands by the door. The girl says she can't say goodbye to her father, but his backpack will always be with her. Azami Yanagi says that means they're going straight to the exit. The girl explains that it's like this. The girl confirms that it is. He reports that panic has broken out in the city due to the explosion. The girl speaks to Mr. Azami, addressing him with concern, and urges him to move forward. Azami informs him that these creatures are no longer human and tells him not to worry so much. Azami Yanagi says they can't even be called animals, but if he sees a dog or a cat anywhere, he'll still slow down. He hopes that's true. The man says things are starting to improve due to the success of their business. The girl says everything is fine, and she was just surprised the man was screaming. He says the worst thing would be if she just froze in place. Then he would have to drag her up the stairs himself. But under the current circumstances, he won't be able to do that and will have to get back in the car and start all over again. The man says there's nothing to be done, you have to act at random and hope. The man says it looks like they've figured out who's in the car and have already set out the bait. The man asks Kadea if she's ready, to which Kadea replies yes. Kadea explains that she'll be covering the man's back so he won't have to look back, and asks him to keep. In the upper right corner, the man says okay. Azami Yanagi orders them to drive, and the girl agrees and confirms it. He explains that the man acts calmly, doesn't look back, and runs straight up the stairs. The girl with the backpack abruptly runs away, noticing the zombie following her, and he's standing nearby. The girl says his backpack will always be with her. Azami Yanagi says, just try. Then Azumi Yanagi strikes the opponent in the head. Oda and the police, most likely along with Yuki and the refugees, are watching him, who is playing the desperate one, which seems quite funny. He reports whether Kazeze succeeded and asks if it is safe to climb up. In the top right, a man warns of danger and asks for caution. Then Azami Yanagi says to climb quickly. In the bottom left, Azami Yanagi punches another man, and in the bottom right, that man is punched in the face. He falls down the stairs. He reports that someone stepped on his head. Azami Yanagi jumps toward the rope ladder. He grabs a rope tightly and begins to move quickly along the rope ladder. A woman speaks to Mr. Azami, turning to him. A man, kneeling, announces that he's back. A man with short hair calls Yanagi and asks who he is. Azami Yanagi replies that he's back, confirming this with the word Oda. He says that unshakable calm is the key to success. The girl says they'll examine her body first and says she thought he warned her. Azami Yanagi explains that there's a policewoman standing outside the door, so there's no need to worry about anyone breaking in. The girl says, it's okay. The woman tells the mentor that he is completely insensitive, and even if she is safe, she still feels awkward. He says that not everyone is capable of undressing at the first request and saying, inspect as much as you want, and that the mentor lacks an ounce of tact. The man apologizes, saying he understands, and Yuka Noshita explains that before the pandemic, she and Azami worked at the same company and introduces herself. Fuji Kazai explains that before the pandemic, she was a first-year high school student and thanks Azami for saving her. Azami suggests calling him simply Kazai, and Yuka Noshita allows him to call her. The guy says they did it and asks if Azami Yanagi is hurt, to which Azami Yanagi replies, no. The man says he's glad they made it and identifies the girl as Kazai. Azami Yanagi explains he was just glad no one was hurt. The woman grabs the man by the sleeve. He says he needs to talk to Oda because he's waiting for him and promises to return soon. The man leaves, and he apologizes to the woman for immediately shifting all the responsibility onto her. The woman says that's just him, the mentor. Azami Yanagi says that Kaida will now be entertained by her older sister and that they will have a lot to talk about. Kaida replies that it's fine. She reports that she woke up in the middle of the night and went out onto the veranda, seeing a human silhouette at that hour, which was already odd. She explains that these people were walking in the middle of the road, swaying from side to side, and the moment she realized the strangeness of the situation, she heard screams. The girl recounts. The top right section reports that the internet and mobile phone service were then cut off, and that food supplies were dwindling, forcing the girl into a corner. Below, the girl explains that the last time she contacted her family, she was told to wait for help and that she had already started packing her backpack to leave, but the woman says she hears a sound from the veranda. Then she opens the door and sees a girl with bloody hands peering out of a broken mirror. Azami Yanagi says she's his neighbor, someone he often crossed paths with, and that she was a student, though he doesn't even know her name. He says she had dull eyes and a lifeless face, and that online, people like her were called infected. Azami Yanagi explains that she was moving. The girl says, hi, and steps back sharply. A woman saw a man on a roof attracting infected people. Azami Yanagi reports a ladder hanging from a police station window. He reports that there were two people next to the woman, a man and a woman, and they were surrounded. The man tried to protect the wounded woman, but she heard them being torn apart and still ran. She grabbed the ladder and began to climb desperately, thinking without a trace of. The girl says everything will be fine, and that's the only thought that comforts her. A man holds another man's foot by the shoe. 3 zombies approach the girl, who raises her leg to strike. The girl says, he is. Azami Yanagi reacts sharply and says, ha! The girl stutters, trying to say something. The woman reports that she was lucky to escape the house without taking her backpack, which would have only slowed her down, and that she was lucky to shake off the sneaker that the infected had grabbed. She also says that Oda helped her by examining her body, and that what happened next for her. Azami Yanagi says Kadia is so sweet and it's hard for her to spend day after day in the company of an insensitive old man. Kadia denies this. Kadia says that when she was completely alone, she was afraid of every noise, especially at night, but she slept peacefully when she was with him. The girl says that from now on there will be more details, and the man replies that yes. Azami Yanagi asks what the other person wanted to talk about, and he replies, yes. He says he failed to help bring the child here and asks for forgiveness, explaining that it was logical on his part. He also says that during his first visit to the shelter, Yanagi asked him for forgiveness. The man says he also has something to apologize to Yanagi for. Adds, the man says that he wanted to say this when Azami Yanagi first told him about this girl and when he left them after gathering provisions. Azami Yanagi explains whether it's worth saving her and risking everything he has, and explains exactly what he thought about it. He says it's clear. The man explains that such thoughts most likely never even crossed his mind, and his plan went off without a hitch. The man says he truly regrets it. Azami Yanagi says that on the day the pandemic first began, he abandoned many civilians. He explains that everyone went out into the streets together in hopes of help, but by then the infected were already walking the streets, and those people became their snack. Azami Yanagi says that he says he killed with his own hands. The man remains silent. Azami Yanagi reports that in an attempt to atone for his sin, he turned the site into a shelter and spread the information online. That same day, many people flocked to the site, but none of them were able to reach them safely. He explains that some were killed, others were bitten while they were climbing. He says he was thinking about how to secure the path to the stairs, looking for the creature's behavior patterns, and researching the network until it was shut down, and that through trial and error they got to what he saw, but by that point many had died. The man explains that he wrote about this place. The boy tells Yanagi that they have a similar experience and that he initially felt the same way. Azami Yanagi explains that Gamireya also suddenly abandoned many people to certain death, which is far more than he could have imagined. Then, Azami Yanagi explains that he stopped. He explains that Oda looks at him with tears in his eyes, like a lost lamb hearing the voice of God, and says that he can't judge or forgive him for anything, but he's not that noble. He then recounts what he told Oda. Azami Yanagi asks not to look at him like that, and the man says that in the silence there is the sound of two men's remorse. Several days have passed since Kaz arrived at the shelter and talked with Oda. Today is the day of another foray for supplies in search of food to sustain this hellish life. The bearded man says that Azami Yanagi and everyone else are simply amazing. Azami Yanagi says that, frankly, they're always short on people. The bald man says he's happy to have someone like Azami Yanagi working with them. The guy asks if Azami Yanagi is back. He says that Kazue is the youngest in the shelter, and everyone is worried about her. He was already thinking that if she was uncomfortable, he wouldn't let her sleep in the same room with him, but Yuki eased his burden when he offered to share a room with her, although later, Azami Yanagi says it's better to live alone, as he can leave unnoticed, and the fact that the windows in his third-floor room aren't visible to the guards makes it even easier. He also says Yuki's room is within range of his skill, and he can react to any danger. He says he can now fully focus on helping Oda. He recounts wondering if he could have done anything to ease Oda's suffering that day, and explains that any words of support from someone like him aren't just empty words. Azami Yanagi says the trip is much safer just by being with them, and hopes it will help ease his guilty conscience, while the man explains he's glad he was able to join the grocery run. The man asks everyone to pay attention, and another man explains that. He reports that the back gate, which they had arbitrarily closed, is now open, and there are no signs of a zombie attack yet. He explains that they first need to inspect the surrounding area and clear everything, then they will move inside, but will not close the gate yet, and will close it immediately after that. Azami Yanagi tells everyone to remain vigilant. The man says he should also take up his role, explaining that this is a clear and precise instruction. The bottom panel shows silhouettes of people surrounded by smoke or fog. The guy reports that 5 are approaching them, and the man sees 2 delivery points and 2 more in the passage. He explains that they need to get rid of the one closest as quickly as possible, without necessarily telling them the location of all the zombies. In the upper right corner, a man reports that, together with a police squad, they successfully disposed of everyone approaching the truck bed and ensured the car's safe departure. In the lower right corner, a man explains that even in the darkness they're still managing to do their job, and Azami Yanagi says he's simply exhausted. He says they're continuing in the same vein. The man says Mr. Yanagi is truly amazing. He replies no and agrees. Azami Yanagi says there's nothing amazing about him. He simply brought powers from another world and was incapable of anything without them. He says he sat in the corner, shaking with fear. He says he had to forcefully suppress his fear of zombies. He fought not only for himself, but also for those he fought for, and for him. These guys are much more worthy of respect. The man says that the gates can now be closed and that the entrance is clear. The man explains that. A man reports finding something. Azami Yanagi confirms it. The man notices something that surprises him. A body with multiple wounds and scattered shell casings lies on the floor. The man reports that it looks like someone else is trying to get rid of the zombies with a gun. He then says that they better quickly load everything into the truck and get out of here. A man tells Azami Yanagi that something tells him the gun bearers might not be very peaceful, and he might have to engage them in combat. The man asks Yanagi to cover their backs so they don't get caught off guard. He says he is, but then calls himself Yanagi. The man says it's accepted. Azami Yanagi says things are bad. 2 soldiers search the room with flashlights. He reports that there is no food or water left, and that everything has been taken out. Azami Yanagi says it's a good thing they didn't encounter anyone, and judging by the amount of supplies they were able to take away, it seems a whole gang was operating here. He explains that this should be enough for a while, but from now on they should get supplies elsewhere. The man replies. He says it's good that they arrived early this time, lucky that at least something was left. Now he just needs to figure out where to look for supplies next time. The man reports that he laughed both on the way to the base and during the sortie, and after saying this, Mr. Oda became sad. A police officer tells a returning man that they have a bountiful catch today and offers to help unload it. The man agrees and greets the officer. On the table are supplies of canned goods, spices, snacks, sweets, and water. The officer explains that the bottled water will last for a week today. The image shows several panels. In the upper right corner are medicines, bedding, and fuel, which the man describes as having managed to obtain. He also explains that they took several batteries, solar panels, and portable generators, all in case the assistant needs more power. The man explains that they use it to supply food to the mayor's office and asks where they managed to get such a treasure. Azami Yanagi says he picked it up from a confiscated warehouse and is glad he managed to learn how to use it while the internet was still working. The man explains that from time to time, the man reports that thanks to symbiosis, they can continue their sorties as before, but with fewer losses, and before, in critical situations, they had to rescue people using rope ladders. He says that it is clear. The young man informs the captain that the systems are operational and the drone is ready to take off. Azami Yanagi tells him to check that the food box is securely fastened. The man controls the drone, which takes off, making sounds. He explains that the mayor's office once had a decent food supply, but for some reason it became insufficient, and now it's become much more difficult to replenish supplies. He says that even with such a valuable resource as water, in the current conditions one must be careful, and points to something, saying, water tanks are installed on the roofs of the city hall and police department, but people don't think about running out and continue to use as much as they're used to. Azami Yanagi reports that this problem is particularly acute at the police department, which has a significantly larger workforce, so he explains that in an instant, the crowd of zombies below them reacted to what was happening much earlier than he or Mr. Oda, since zombies have more sensitive hearing than normal people, and only a little later did the sound reach his ears. Husband. The man announces that a long-awaited blessing and deliverance, or perhaps a military helicopter, is flying towards them. Azami Yanagi says that more to come. The guy says it's a military helicopter and says the soldiers are still alive. The boy asks if they really came to rescue them. The man explains that the soldier who came out contacted Mr. Oda on the radio, and they talked about the police department, the mayor's office, and the rescued people who are now in the shelter. Azami Yanagi explains that. The man reports that a military helicopter has arrived ready to take on board the survivors, and that upon completion, there will be a place for each soldier. The man states that the evacuation of government employees is currently a military priority and asks for everyone's understanding. He also explains that the current amount of fuel is only enough to transport everyone currently in the city hall to safety. The man and the woman agree. Azami Yanagi reports that on that day, everyone came out to see off the rapidly departing helicopter carrying people from the city hall. He says that this situation once again proves how much people trust Mr. Oda, and explains that he has once again been convinced of what wonderful people live here. The girl says that it turns out they are saved. The woman says they owe a lot to Azami, as well as Yuki and the people from the shelter who treat them well, and she's very happy about it. Azami Yanagi confirms this with a yes. The girl turns to the woman saying, "You see, Kaidi?" He says they're celebrating too soon. The girl says they shouldn't forget what Senpai did for them and explains that he cared about them so much all this time. The guy says Kaidi is really nice after all. The girl is surprised. The girl says they know, but the man remains silent. The man tensely says, "Where the hell are they?" A man in a police uniform leans against a table, looking tired and tense, while Azami Yanagi stands behind him. A building with the sign, nevertheless, is depicted in the background. He reports that Mr. Oda was unusually irritated, and a week has passed since then, but the military helicopter still has a return for them. He explains that fortunately there was enough food and water for everyone for now, but it was getting low, which meant that they would soon need to. Azami Yanagi explains that when he first came here, he felt lost and that these powers granted to him by another world were new to him. He explains that if he can use them discreetly, most of Lord Oda's problems will be instantly resolved, but he won't be able to use them. He informs her that the car he and Cade arrived in contains some supplies they've stocked up on just in case, and asks her to take them if she runs out of anything at the shelter. The man asks Yanagi if he's sure about that. The woman apologizes for the late message and turns to Azami Yanagi explains that perhaps if there's enough food in the trunk, they'll be able to replenish their supplies well, and thanks them, saying they'll definitely find a use for it. The man says there's no need to apologize and apologizes for the late message. Azami Yanagi says there might be a strange sound. He says he might be able to keep Mr. Oda and the others out of danger, though Mr. Oda would probably try to stop him if he knew about it, but he wouldn't listen. The man explains that as soon as the supplies run out, they'll replenish them with what's in the car, but for now. The image contains no speech bubbles or text, just an image of a building and sky. There are no messages or dialogues to retell. The sound of rain can be heard against the background of the building image. Azami Yanagi reports that he first made sure the door to the White Room was securely locked. He explains that it's the middle of the night, with a light drizzle, the perfect time for a secret raid. Everyone except the guards on duty is already asleep. The guy puts on a glove, then puts on a helmet and opens the door. The guy says that as soon as he managed to get out of sight of the guards, he immediately jumped down. He says he checked the map beforehand to find the exact location of the central military base, but no matter how you look at it, it's far away. Azami Yanagi says that if he catches anyone's eye, he'll likely be back before dawn. He reports that he is jumping from the roof of a building. The man says that the city is plunged into night darkness. Azami Yanagi reports that this is the central military base and confirms that it is definitely there. He explains that his magically enhanced vision revealed hordes of mindless zombies striding through the inner grounds. Azami Yanagi explains that it turns out the base is. He says it's ridiculous and is surprised they were so careless as to back down. He explains that he thinks people should have been checked for injuries much more thoroughly than even the police. He then says that maybe there are still some of you out there. Azami Yanagi reports that these appear to be barracks. He says there are no survivors. He reports that there is no one here either. Then he raises the curtain. Azami Yanagi reports finding pocket knives, sleeping bags, and kerosene lamps in tents behind the gymnasium. He explains that the evacuees were apparently housed inside the building, while they themselves spent the night in tents outside. He reports that during his inspection, he noticed tire tracks on the wet asphalt, indicating military movement toward the sea. Following them to the boat dock, he saw a row of trucks parked as if they were trying to form a defensive line. Azami Yanagi reports that the military took the boats and simply drove off somewhere, making it highly likely they disappeared. He explains that this hardly resembles a disappearance without a trace, and he wonders where exactly they went. Azami Yanagi says he decided to check the base again, just in case. He is silent, soaring into the sky above the buildings. Azami Yanagi explains that the outbreak occurred precisely where people were being examined, because the military protocol for discovering injuries in soldiers is much stricter and harsher, and he does not think that such high-ranking officials took such an important matter so lightly. He reports that the only thing he now clearly understands is that, in this situation, hoping for rescue by the military is as useless as waiting for a pig to fly. He assumes that since they set off so soon, they had boats with supplies prepared. Azami Yanagi reports that there were very few soldiers among the zombies wandering around the base, but almost all of them had wounds on their bodies typical of those usually received in war, and the area itself was full of signs of a struggle. He says that he can't just tell Mr. Oda the truth, but if he can't find peace and try to find it himself. The guy says he'll have to pluck up the courage and tell everyone. Azami Yanagi says that she will follow him unquestioningly until the very end and thinks that this is the best way out. He reports that 2 days have passed since his sortie at the base and that he, as before, was on guard duty along with some of Lord Oda's other subordinates. He then expresses surprise. Azami Yanagi reports that he has a sneaking suspicion that someone is watching them, and it feels like someone hostile. He explains that the danger is clearly not coming from the roof of the police department, but rather from something inside, and it's definitely not zombies, but someone. He reports that they will have big problems. The next day, Azami Yanagi leaves the building. A man with short hair asks why he's there and informs him that it's not his turn to be on duty today. A second man watches them silently. He says the weather is great today and he wants to get some fresh air. He asks if help has arrived. The man says that perhaps something happened to them on the way. He notes that it's probably that feeling again. Azami Yanagi reports that, like yesterday, it's coming from the building across the street. He explains that, strangely, he didn't feel anything like this when the military helicopter arrived, and like every time strangers visited them, he says that perhaps he snuck into the shelter long before this moment, for example, when everyone was asleep. He explains that although his abilities allow him to sense such things, he still doesn't know what to do with these feelings, and getting rid of the ill-wisher without any apparent reason would be, at least. Azami Yanagi says she doesn't know what to do next. A man with binoculars shouts at Azami Yanagi to come here. Another man calls out to Mr. Yanagi. Bloodstains are visible on the street, and several people are standing and lying next to a car. The security guard reports that a car just drove down the main street and is heading toward the building's parking lot. He says there are still survivors. The police warn Azami Yanagi to retreat and turn to Mr. Oda. The man with the gun is surprised and asks if this place is a safe house. The man warns him not to move, so as not to cause harm, and says that his gun will be taken away from him temporarily. The man orders him to raise his hands and stand still, and the man explains that this is a shelter and he wasn't going to do anything. The man says that he didn't even resist when they took his gun. The look the stranger gave Mr. Oda was full of hatred. Azami Yanagi reports that they have a walkie-talkie and a pocket knife, as well as another hunting knife, and apologizes, but says that all of it will have to be confiscated. He informs the other person that if there are any objections, he can't help in any way, and that the other person is free to leave this place whenever they want, even right now. The man says he understands, and then everything is fine, after which he laughs. Azami Yanagi tells Mr. Oda to be careful with this guy. The man asks Yanagi what happened. He says he doesn't like the man either, and that he seems too suspicious. The man says he regrets not leaving and admits it was selfish of him. The guy replies that he doesn't at all. If this guy is somehow connected to the bodies at the supermarket, Azami Yanagi says they're in deep trouble and explains that this explains why he had knives and a walkie-talkie with him. Then Azami Yanagi says it looks like it's true. He explains that without any special training, Mr. Oda can't easily recognize danger, but right now he's voicing what Azami is thinking. He also says that it's possible this guy could be part of a group that's keeping tabs on them. Azami Yanagi says he can't describe how impressed he is with Mr. Oda, who handled the situation so quickly and clearly even though he wasn't on the observation deck at the time. He says they still haven't received the helicopter and they'll need supplies from the car soon. The man says that he, a girl with long dark hair, says there's a new arrival at their shelter. A woman with short hair listens. Azami Yanagi reports that, unfortunately, that's true, the girl says. Well, the man says that while he may seem intimidating because he's all in black and has tons of piercings, he's seen him be friendly with other people and interact easily and naturally. The man. He informs her that Mr. Oda also believes she should be on guard around him, advising her to try not to be alone, to always lock her room, and not to open the door to anyone after dark. The girl replies that she understands. Then the two girls react to A's words with wariness and distrust. Azami Yanagi reports that 3 days have passed since the strange man arrived at the shelter. He says he continued to keep watch on the roof, but everything remained the same, and he had no idea what to do with it all. He says that they were going to replenish their supplies that day, taking some supplies from his car. The man says, "Let's go." The plan is this. First, they drive a regular supply truck to the abandoned car, then get out of the truck and into the car, after which they drive the car and truck back, with the truck following behind. The man explains that Mr. Oda didn't want him involved until the very end. They reported that they decided to attach a smartphone to a drone used for transporting supplies and turn up the music louder in an attempt to distract the zombies with an external stimulus. Azami Yanagi tells her to drive a little closer and stop the car. The man says it doesn't seem to have worked and asks what to do now. Azami Yanagi explains that this will do. He strikes with an axe. The man flies out of the car. Azami Yanagi runs toward a car with its doors open. The man falls to the ground after being stabbed in the stomach, and Azami Yanagi kicks him in the chest. A man calls out. He reaches for the open car door. The man is hit in the face with an axe. Azami Yanagi kicks a man, sending him flying backwards and bleeding from the mouth. The man with the walkie-talkie says they're just messing around, and Azami Yanagi explains that they'll return to their original route and somehow live like that. He reports that after taking the car, they immediately wanted to head back, but they didn't rush, as their actions could easily attract the zombies' attention. He explains that, to avoid being followed, they decided to circle the area. He explains that, seeing the huge amount of supplies, the man reports that Mr. Oda was delighted. There were so many that they even had to remove the back seats to fit everything, as the trunk wouldn't fit everything. The bald-headed guard admiringly tells Mr. Oda about all his. Azami Yanagi reports that he then took his leave, leaving Mr. Oda and the others in the garage while he headed to the residential building. He explains that he had been uneasy about the newcomer's presence, so for his own peace of mind, he decided to make sure everything was all right. Then Azami his sixth sense told him he was right now in the same room as Kaede, and they were completely alone. Then they showed someone running quickly down the hallway and heading for the door. Azami Yanagi abruptly opens the door. The girl, with tears in her eyes, holds a knife to her face. He reports that his premonition failed him. The girl says that she was stupid, although Mr. Azami warned her about it, but even that could not protect her. The man informs her that, to avoid distracting Yuki from her conversation with a rather stern-looking woman, she's decided to quietly slip away to the restroom alone. The girl says, "Hello." The man says, "This is Kadaya." The girl says, The guy asks what they are doing near this room, and Azami Yanagi says that it doesn't belong to them. In the top panel on the right, the man says he made a mistake. In the bottom panel on the right, the girl repeats that he made a mistake, and the man explains that he simply opened the wrong door. The top panel on the left shows the girl's legs standing against the wall. Azami Yanagi tells the girl not to enter the room and not even think about screaming. The girl asks why he's doing this. Azami Yanagi demands that she shut up and says he didn't tell her to be quiet. The girl, holding a knife, reacts sharply to his words. The guy says that since the girl is here anyway, it's okay to have just a little bit. The girl says, yeah. The man swallows. The guy leans sharply toward the girl. The guy says that's not it, and demands that she shut up and not resist, asking if the girl understands. The girl tries to say something, but the guy suddenly grabs her breast. The woman says, "It's all disgusting and repulsive." The man says, "It's disgusting." Azami Yanagi abruptly opens the door. He reports that he has arrived. The boy reports that the lock is broken and expresses dissatisfaction. Azami Yanagi tells him not to move or make a sound, then asks him to carefully step inside and close the door. The boy, in a panic, lets out a cry. He tells Kaede to close her eyes for a moment. The man orders the girl to remain silent and threatens to kill her if she doesn't obey. Below are images of intense eyes. The boy reacts sharply with surprise. Azami Yanagi grabs the girl and throws the boy to the floor. He says, "That's it, Kaze. You can open your eyes." The man apologizes and says that he will destroy it. He presses the man and tells him to be silent. The man says, "Unless you want to die." The girl says she remained sitting on the floor, locked in a room with two men, and could only watch as the stranger whispered something in Mr. Azami's ear. The man asks, "Except who and from where?" and follows. The girl says that it may be bad to think about Mr. Azami, who has always been so kind to her. Azami Yanagi says he looked like this and says it's scary. The sound of a door opening? Azami Yanagi says he is. The man asks if it's really him. The man replies with fear. He says that everyone was too busy with supplies, so everything is fine, and the man says that he is so sorry before him. He explains that the same cannot be said about Kaze. The only good thing is that the worst-case scenario still passed her, although it sounds. According to Mr. Oda, he waited until the guards left, then began sneaking into other people's rooms and searching them. Azami Yanagi reports that the knife he threatened him and Kazai with appears to have come into his possession in this manner. As he discovered, the group's original purpose in arriving there was to scout out the police department, after which they planned to break out and contact their comrades. Apparently, he wasn't planning to rob anyone, but was merely trying to find a working radio. Azami Yanagi says that at least now they know he's not alone, but he refused to reveal the location of their secret hideout. He explains that he didn't reveal either the client or the hideout's location, just as he wanted. Azami Yanagi also explains that it wasn't because he simply didn't know. He explains that submission is a skill that, when used, heightens the victim's sense of fear while depriving them of the ability to act on their own free will. Azami Yanagi explains that this is precisely why he needed to ensure Kazai wouldn't fall under his influence at that moment, and only then did he activate the Fullbring, channeling all of its power into the intended target. Azami Yanagi then explains that he was at his opponent's side in the blink of an eye, using his nav. He says he wasn't sure Mr. Oda would be able to handle the data properly, so he warned a stranger in advance to keep his mouth shut and to be wary of his abilities. The man says he'll personally take care of the gang tonight. The sound of sudden movement is heard in the corridor where someone is rushing rapidly. The image contains no text or characters, only buildings at night. The man says they shouldn't have sent him there, Azami Yanagi says. Yeah, right, and the man explains that if they'd come up with a plan B, they wouldn't have had to hang around there forever. The man with the gun asks who's there and points the gun at the man in the helmet with his hands raised. The man with the gun asks who else is here, and the guy with the bat asks if it's new, but the man in the helmet remains silent. The guy with the bat prepares to strike. Azami Yanagi punches a helmeted man, then quickly pushes him away, delivering a series of powerful blows to his back. He says it doesn't hurt yet. The man says it does, and he asks if it hurts. The man explains it hurts, and he squeezes the man's hand, who asks him to let go and says, "It hurts, it hurts, it hurts." Azami Yanagi reports that his arm is disintegrating and turning to ash. The man screams in pain. The man says he's scared and hiccups, then he yells, "What the hell is this?" and calls his interlocutor a bastard. Azami Yanagi tells them not to scream and explains that it's even better that scum like the woman lying on the floor are eliminated without mercy. He declares that he will deal with them without mercy. Then Azami Yanagi says it's time for interrogation and advises them to answer quickly, and he asks if there are anyone else in the shelter besides them. The man replies that there aren't. He clarifies whether it's true that they don't even hold any women who were kidnapped captive. The man says that there are definitely no living women and gives his word of honor. Azami Yanagi expresses bewilderment. The man begs her to wait and explains that they need to cut off his head first and then go wherever they want, because he's already dead as a human. The man explains that after death, you become one of them and start attacking everyone, so he asks her to cut it off quickly. He says, "What is this?" The man reports that the corpse suddenly came back to life. The guy says he is. The man expresses fear. A tied-up man begs for something to be done. A guy in a helmet grabs a baton and hits another guy, ripping his face open. The man in the helmet stands still, and the tied-up man asks how this happened. Azami Yanagi is silent and thinks that the blonde man was definitely a zombie, and his skill identified him as a zombie, and before he was sure that only those who were cursed by other zombies become zombies. He says that if only the others could see where this is all heading. He explains that it doesn't look like the guy is lying, and maybe they should interrogate him more, and then says, well, screw it. The man with his hands tied asks something incomprehensible. Azami Yanagi tells him to keep his mouth shut about being here, and warns him that otherwise he will find him everywhere, no matter how hard he tries to escape. The so-called anti-lawyers gang is reported to have taken refuge in a former shopping mall nearby. Azami Yanagi announces that he is alone and asks not to interfere. The man explains that they are not going to give up, and that there are only 3 of them left. The man says there is some strange guy on their territory and asks to send someone here. Azami Yanagi says he's here to kill everyone. The man asks what Azami Yanagi is doing here and where he came from. He says he won't come out and fires his gun. The man asks in surprise what he's doing. He continues moving forward despite the shot. The guy says that in such a situation, it's better to think about self-defense. The man reaches out for the crowbar coming out of the portal. The man says he can walk through walls and explains that this is possible due to a special ability. Azami Yanagi says the person he's talking to is already dead. The man makes a choking sound and reacts to it. He strikes the man, who falls to the ground and makes sounds of pain. The man lies silent on the ground. Azami Yanagi reveals that the guy was telling the truth after all. He then delivers a blow, causing the opponent's body to begin to disintegrate. The man says he'll set up an ambush upstairs, since he's on the stairs and everyone alive is heading there. The man expresses outrage at what this bastard has done. He says everyone will soon be waiting for him upstairs, adding that this will save him time. Azami Yanagi reveals that the suit he's wearing is imbued with a special magical energy, making it impervious to rain and bullets. He then strikes with his sword, creating a powerful slash and ejecting a multitude of particles into the air. The man reports that blood is dripping. The guy says it's a monster. The man says, "Chew." The guy screams in fear. Azami Yanagi says that no one can escape from him as long as the man runs away. The man says he can't shoot and is shaking with fear, and he laughs quietly. Azami Yanagi strikes. The man stands in the corner of the room. Azami Yanagi says it's a monster. The man sits against the wall headless, from which a black mass erupts. He turns to the man, who he says is the last one left, and says he'd like to ask him a few questions. The man replies, "Who is this anyway?" and apologizes for the noise, calling him a random passerby. Azami Yanagi says that the 2 who guarded the police station and everyone else who was here are all his comrades, or is there someone else? The man says they were stocking up at a nearby supermarket, then explains that that's all and no one else. The man says they. The man asks, besides the man he's talking to, if there are any other armed groups nearby, and then clarifies the last question. The man says that the only other people nearby are police. The man says that then he has nothing to worry about. The man confirms this. The guy asks for help. The man in the helmet abruptly pulls away. The man says it's impossible. Azami Yanagi says the head is torn off and rolling on the floor. A man lets out a loud, piercing scream. Azami Yanagi says it's curious and reports that even when dehydrated, he starts turning into a zombie. He reports that the residents are now definitely safe. He explains that that's all and it's time to return to the shelter. Azami Yanagi reports that foraging expeditions should be much safer and suggests that Mr. Oda doesn't need to know about what happened. He explains that if the victim isn't decapitated in time, he will inevitably turn into a zombie, leading to the conclusion that He reports that the military probably also avoided those who had not been bitten, but he has never heard of them getting rid of those who had not been bitten or wounded, and explains that this is practically the same as shooting an innocent person. He tells. Azami Yanagi reports that one of the survivors falls ill and then dies in the middle of the night, after which the newly formed undead slowly begins to turn into a zombie and then attacks the others, causing them to become one too. He explains that since it happened at night, in the dark, a little panic grips the crowd. They run out of the gym and into a large group of zombies, where they become lost. No one can tell friend from foe, and against this backdrop, people finally fall into despair. In the midst of the gunfight, bullets hit living people, which Azami Yanagi says he doesn't know how accurate his assumption is, but it seems likely. He explains that after some thought, he decided to tell Mr. Oda what he'd learned, and says he read somewhere online that it's not only those bitten who become transformed. A man says that it seems like that's what those guys said about him, and another man says that he freezes in horror. Azami Yanagi says that it would seem that there is no problem and asks what is wrong with that, and also explains why he should suddenly care what all sorts of scum thinks about me. He tells Mr. Oda, Kaida, and Yuki that he wonders what they would think if they knew about his power. He explains that the look of the bandits, who looked at him with inhuman horror, is frozen in his memory forever, like a photograph, and tells how he would feel if Azami Yanagi says that will the day come when they look at him and call him a monster? He says that he should not tell anyone about this power and use it only in case of extreme necessity. Azami Yanagi says that when he was walking towards Kaede and the car broke down, that guy attacked her and tried to rape her. He explains that at such moments he must be extremely careful not to accidentally reveal himself, and that otherwise he must remain cautious. He explains that, embraced by darkness and loneliness, he can only entrust his secret to the moonlight. Azami Yanagi knocks on the door and asks if Senpai is there. The woman apologizes for disturbing him and asks Azami if he's too busy. Azami says everything is fine and nothing happened. The text explains that after that incident, Yuki took over Kaze's care and now always tries to be there for her. The girl tells Kaze she doesn't know if she'll look weird if she says something like that. Kaze explains that everything will be fine because her senpai is kind and will understand. The girl agrees. The woman says she's leaving and says goodbye. The girl replies that she is. Azami Yanagi asks if something bad happened, but the girl remains silent. The girl says he can't even imagine how grateful she is, and confirms this with the word truth. The woman says that at that moment he was something special, and even now he remains a little like that, and since then she has kind of changed. He says he's a little afraid. Azami Yanagi explains that the reason for the girl's fear is perfectly clear. She's talking about the moment he had to pressure that guy, but hearing it directly from Kaze is somehow difficult. The girl asks if she can touch Azami Yanagi. Azami Yanagi says, "Do whatever you want." He says that she put her hand on his shoulder. The girl squeezes his shoulder and hugs him. The girl explains that she doesn't understand why she was so scared and says that she's always treated Azami Yanagi well. Azami Yanagi squeezes the girl's shoulder and she calls him Mr. Azami. The girl says she can pat her head. The woman says she's still a little scared. She explains that if the man does this, her fear will disappear completely. The man remains silent. Azami Yanagi says she doesn't have to overcome herself, but the girl says no. He says he will always be there to protect her and asks her not to be afraid. The girl silently hugs him, and then he puts his hand on her head. A guy says he's a monster. A girl says she's afraid of him. A man in the background calls him a monster. The girl calls Azami Yanagi sir and addresses him. Azami Yanagi asks what happened. The girl turns to him and says that she seems to be okay now and apologizes for him having to babysit her. He asks if she is no longer afraid, to which the girl replies that she is not anymore, and he says that then he is calm. The girl says to Mr. Azami, and he says yes. Azami Yanagi says it's okay to pat her on the head, but the girl asks him to do it again. He reports that he has infiltrated the gang's main propaganda point, a shopping center, and explains that it is now the middle of the night. The man reports that an inspection of the interior revealed that quite a lot of the supplies they needed were still in the building, and that he had recently heard from Mr. Oda that the cisterns near the police department were almost completely empty of drinking water. Azami Yanagi reports that all floors, from the first to the last, were. He reports that after thinking about it carefully, he came back here again the next day to clean up a bit, and that it took some time to completely clear the building of zombies and of the rabble that once called themselves a member of a bandit group. Azami Yanagi reports that after this, he set up barricades throughout the entire interior, floors, stairways, escalators. He secured all vulnerable areas, then stocked up on food containers and placed all the provisions on the second floor of the indoor parking garage. He explains that even if the masters He says he thinks there's nothing more for him to do here, and if his efforts can somehow help others survive, then they won't have been in vain. The next day, at the same shopping center, a man tells Azami Yanagi what he thinks. Azami Yanagi asks him what he thinks. The man reports that he is silent. The man reports that the main entrance is securely barricaded, the back entrance is also blocked with steel shutters, and the parking lot is surrounded on all sides by vans. From all outward signs, it appears as if someone has already occupied the space. The man explains that perhaps this is only an appearance, and there is no evidence. The man says he'll try to get inside, then says, okay. Azami Yanagi says she'll go first, and the others should follow, and advises them to approach from the parking lot, where they're definitely not. The man says he understands it's awkward to drag Yanagi into this and begs her to be careful. Azami Yanagi gets out of the car and heads forward. The man warns that one of the creatures has managed to get inside. He holds a spear in his mouth. Then the spear plunges into the attacker's face. Azami Yanagi tells everyone to stay focused, pay attention, and keep a sharp eye out, then explains that he hasn't encountered a single zombie yet. The text block states that, according to Mr. Oda's plan, if zombies infiltrate the area, they should inform the others and then work together to eliminate them. He says that, did they really think that he could let them do this? Azami Yanagi says that if he can handle something on his own, with or without magical power, then he won't resort to anyone's help. It will be much better for both himself and for the safety of others. He explains that there is only one exit in the building, and if the enemy goes there, they won't be able to catch them. He explains that they need to go the other way to intercept the enemy. The man reports that there are boxes of supplies on the second floor of the parking lot, but he's unsure if someone is in the interior. He warns that if the supplies belong to someone, they have no right to just take them, and they don't need any additional trouble. The man orders the guards to disperse. The guy says they're the military? Could it be that all these boxes of supplies belong to them? The man explains that it looks like there's no one there, no people, no zombies. But then why is this building so well protected? Someone did a good job of it. The man says it's unlikely. The man says he wants to know what Yanagi thinks. Azami Yanagi replies that he doesn't even know and says the man probably knows more about it than he does. The man explains that you won't be able to walk around the entire shopping center in a day anyway and says that here's how. Azami Yanagi announces that they're probably done for today and explains that they need to load all the supplies they found in the parking lot into the back of the truck and get going. The man writes a note of apology and explains that they had to use some of the recipient's provisions. He asks what they're doing. The man says he's writing a note and leaving it in case anyone misses the supplies. The man explains that time is running out and they'll be back tomorrow. He says that if they can find out that the building really isn't being used, they'll be... No one dared to oppose Mr. Oda's decision, so Azami Yanagi reports that with a joint effort, they began filling the truck with provisions. At the sight of the truck filled to the brim, genuine joy lit up their tired faces. He explains that now he has a whole day to secretly bring even more supplies into the shopping center, and adds that it might even be for the best that they didn't have time to inspect everything today. A truck drives along an empty street, making a sound from its engine. Azami Yanagi says he's gathered everyone to discuss the latest mission, and asks everyone to listen carefully. He also says he'd like to hear everyone's honest opinions on everything that happened today. The girl says she wishes there were at least some clothes left there, and he says they are moving to a new place. Azami Yanagi explains that there used to be a shopping mall on that spot, with many stores renting space there, and asks if Yuki has probably been there before. Yuki says something's wrong and asks what kind of place it is. He says it looks quite safe and there's no need to worry, and that Mr. Oda thinks the same and there are plenty of provisions. He explains that they can sit inside for a while and won't even have to venture to the surface. The girl says that's fine then. Azami Yanagi says the girl doesn't seem to have calmed down. The girl says she'll trust Mr. Oda and his team and everything will be fine. The girl says, okay. He says that all these worries are not in their favor, and the man explains that, on the other hand, the pros of moving to a new shelter significantly outweigh the cons. The man agrees. The girl remains silent. Azami Yanagi says they'll do their best, no matter what. The man explains they'll wait until the unrest subsides and then take action. Mr. Oda reports that after much discussion, he gathered all the survivors along with the police in the main hall to announce the move. The man reports that preparations are underway, the shopping center is being rechecked for danger, and provisions are being delivered, and also says it feels like the day will never end. Azami Yanagi confirms this. The guy says that when night falls, all work will stop, and they'll rest a bit because they can't work themselves to the point of exhaustion. He says they'll transport all the survivors, and then do whatever you want with him. Azami Yanagi says he'll be with them until the very end and asks what they were thinking. The man thanks Yanagi and says he's been a great help. The guy tells her there's a military base in the area where military vehicles are stored. The girl says the area is heavily guarded and off-limits. The man explains that the military vehicles are used to protect the city and maintain order. The transfer of the police squad, survivors, women, and children, along with all belongings to the new location, was reportedly complete. They then walked around the shopping center again and, having confirmed everything was in order, wrapped up all work until the morning. The text reports that it has only now been noticed that there are far fewer men among the survivors, including police officers. So much so that Mr. Oda and I felt a bit uneasy, and Azami Yanagi asked if it was really necessary to take him along. Overcoming this feeling, they headed toward the cameras. The guy says everyone had different opinions, but overall, they'll probably have to. The man asks if he can ask him. He tells them to keep quiet. The guy calls out to Eek. He explains that he's nothing but trouble and can't be of any use to them. The boy says that leaving him here without protective equipment would be tantamount to abandoning a man to his fate, and explains that providing him with weapons from their reserves is also impossible. Azami Yanagi says this means they're leaving him here to die. The man asks if they're sure they're in the shelter. He says he has the utmost respect for her, but he can't support her in this situation because it's too risky and he's personally against it. The man says he understands. The man reports that they said he was hesitant, however, and explains that, judging by Azami Yanagi's words, he isn't even considering the option of leaving him here, even though it would be worth it. The man says that, on the one hand, Azami Yanagi is right, the food supply isn't endless. The man says that he is silent anyway. Azami Yanagi holds a gun in his hand. A man in a police uniform shouts at Yanagi and tries to stop him. The guy says that if he can't win, he will die, and explains that he doesn't want to die. Azami Yanagi says no, just. Then he fires his revolver. The man says he is bleeding heavily and won't be able to get to the hospital. Azami Yanagi says the price for the actions is clear, answering the question, for what? The guy says he's Yanagi and addresses the other person as you. The man and the guy in police uniform say they heard a noise and ask what happened. Azami Yanagi informs them that now they won't have to make the difficult decision themselves. The man hands the other man an object. He says that now, looking back, he thinks he made the right decision, and Mr. Oda should understand that too. He explains that he spared him the burden of taking on that responsibility and won't even have to throw anyone out. Azami Yanagi says that such creatures should be disposed of immediately. He explains that he's confident others won't judge him because he's done nothing wrong, and he wonders how others will react to his actions, wondering if he's made a mistake. He reports that, as always, he did only what he had to. When it was all over, Azami Yanagi reported that they had successfully moved to a new place, and upon learning of this incident, the others only said that it was okay, but they would get more food, and that was the end of it. He reports that there were some difficulties that had to be dealt with, and it also started raining. The man confirms that it's good that they were able to get here without any problems. The girl says that it's still great that they were able to get here without incident. The girl says she would be happy to. Azami Yanagi says that if they ask, then fine. He says they're going shopping. The girl says it's finally shopping. The guy is happy and says, hooray! Azami Yanagi says there's nothing in this building but empty walls and corridors, explaining that there shouldn't be any traces of anyone here. The man says the place looks abandoned and unused. The girl says they should continue their search elsewhere. The guy asks Yanagi to listen and asks why he did it anyway, and Yanagi explains that he only did what he thought was right. Azami Yanagi says he simply helped him make the right decision, as everyone else was hesitant. He then explains that this moment also played a role. The man asks if this was the deciding factor, and clarifies whether he did it only because he attacked Kaede. Azami. The guy asks him where his indifference comes from and why he became like this, and also demands to know why it is necessary to get rid of such worthless creatures. He asks if the guy has ever killed people. Azami Yanagi says he killed a lot. The guy says he's joking. He says it's true. The man expresses shock. Azami Yanagi informs them that they will no longer have to agonize over the choice between killing or not. He will do everything for them. The man says he doesn't know if this will change anything and asks if something was missing. He explains that, for the most part, he killed only in self-defense, like with that guy, for example, when someone was in his way or someone posed a threat. He says that he's killed many people for these reasons too, but there were some exceptions. Azami Yanagi says that he couldn't stop himself, explains that this question touched the strings of his soul that he had tried to hide until now, and says that he didn't yet know how much he had done wrong by doing this, but he didn't want to lie to everyone anymore. He gives his name. The man asks what he will do if something like this happens again. Azami Yanagi announces that next time he won't hold back and will kill without hesitation. The man, leaning on a table, says, That's it. He says that then he says that in that case he will have to expel the interlocutor. Azami Yanagi says, it's like this. He reports that there are two men who understand the essence. He explains that killing those who stand in your way, getting rid of the unnecessary, is an ideology that differs from what was accepted in the world before, but some people have accepted it and now live among the rest. He says that Mr. Oda could also be one of them. The man asks if it was really that easy to kill him. Azami Yanagi replies that yes, it was. Azami Yanagi explains that he did it for Kaide and Yuki. The man explains that when they first met, he told Yanagi something important, to be responsible for your actions. The man says he tries to keep his word. Azami Yanagi says that long ago, while looking for shelter for Kaide, he wandered the empty streets, not knowing where to go, and eventually returned to her with nothing. He says that even back then he considered the shopping center as an option for shelter, since there was a lot of food there, and even if something suddenly ran out, you could always look nearby, which was safer than just hanging around the street. He reports that if the soldiers managed to survive, then they were. Azami Yanagi says Yuki will be furious. The man confirms that Azami Yanagi is right. Azami Yanagi says to let everyone think he died fighting the infected. The man remains silent. The man says he's in his element. Azami Yanagi reports that early the next morning, while everyone was still asleep, they left the shelter under the pretext of inspecting the remaining supplies, some of which were planned to be transported to the main building, after which he was supposed to leave. He reports that there is a lot of blood and disorder in the room, and the man explains that someone tried to barricade themselves, but the door was still broken down. The guy reports that the connection has been lost. The man explains that they received a signal from the other end of the building and is going to check what's going on there. The man announces that the guests are here and quickly orders everyone to pack up and jump into the van. The man announces that a truck with evacuation supplies has arrived and explains that they need to quickly load all the boxes and head to a safe location. Azami Yanagi says he's ready to help with the loading and asks for directions. The guy with the mustache says it's Yanagi after all. The bald man says it's dangerous there and suggests they come over. He says he was happy to work with the guys. The guy says to take care of Kaide and Yuki and say hello to Mr. Oda. The image has no characters or speech, but shows a building against a skyline. Azami Yanagi says that Kaide woke up early today and wishes her good morning. Kaede responds in kind and asks Yuki why she's outside Senpai's room. Yuki says she didn't expect to see Kaede there and asks if she has any business with Senpai. The girl says something. The man says that he has already gotten up, and the girl asks where he went. The girl shouts Kaede, and another girl asks, "Excuse me," and Mr. Azumi. The girl explains that she apologizes for being abrupt and says that's how it is. The woman says she was startled by the girl's abrupt departure. Azami Yanagi greets them and says it's nice to see them so friendly, and the woman replies, "Good morning." The girl explains that Kaede likes their senpai and is crazy about him, but the other girl says that it's nothing like that. The guy says it's true. The girl is sweeping the floor. There's a backpack lying nearby. The woman reports that Mr. Oda and his group have returned and are having some conversation with them. The woman says this with a slight smile. On the site, a group of people stands scattered. The sounds of footsteps can be heard around them. The girl asks where Mr. Azami is. The man in the police uniform remains silent. Azami Yanagi asks for your attention and announces that he has an important announcement. The girl says she doesn't want anyone to get hurt because of her and explains that she can't afford to be weak. He says he understands her feelings and promises to support her so she can move forward. Azami Yanagi announces that they've finally reached the right place. The girl starts to speak but doesn't have time to finish. The girl speaks to Mr. Azami, he reports. Several people are standing on the platform. The woman coughs. The girl says no. The man looks at her seriously. The woman says this can't be true. She doesn't want to believe it, doesn't believe it, and says no. Azami Yanagi says only no, and the girl informs Mr. Azami. There is no text or characters in the image, so there is no retelling. The man says that this is the place where they met Kaede. Azami Yanagi reports that he hasn't been here for a long time. He reports that on that day the girl says she asked him to pat her head, but the guy never did. Azami Yanagi stands silently by the closed door, sword in hand. He then opens the door and enters the room. The top panel shows his focused gaze. He says that he sent his daughter to a safe place, and now she is in good hands, and also says that there is nothing to worry about and you can sleep peacefully. Azami Yanagi says it's not her. He turns his back and looks at the body on the floor, then walks down the hallway. He delivers a powerful blow that causes two opponents to fall apart. Azami Yanagi reports that several days have passed since then, and it was enough for his heart to completely freeze, and sadness, loneliness, and pain ceased to touch him. He explains that he suddenly forgot about people. They no longer meant anything to him, and from then on, all he saw before him was crowds. He reports that he then looked into the old shelter and walked through the floors. Perhaps Mr. Oda would want to come back here for something else, so he should check here too. Azami Yanagi says that he never considered Mr. Oda's decision unfair, never doubted it for a second, never felt resentment or anger, and in the end, even after everything that happened, he still respects Mr. Oda and will always respect him. He says that it's much calmer here now, he's done everything he could for them and they don't need him anymore, and the thought of it suddenly makes his heart ache. The edge of the page says that by killing again and again, he's trying to forget. Azami Yanagi says it will sound strange, but the girl says she thinks Azami is still alive. The woman says the same thing. The girl says it's Kaede. The girl explains that it's just intuition. The man asks why she has such thoughts. Azami Yanagi says intuition, and the girl also reports. He reports that when they met him at the hardware store, it was clear this wasn't his first time going out alone. He explains that not only Oda, but also other police officers were missing, and says that the infected killed him. The girl says she can't go on like this any longer, and explains that she needs time to sort herself out. The woman says she understands and supports her decision. The guy hugs the girl and says she might be right. The girl turns to Yuki and asks if he might know something. The girl asks what it's about. Azami Yanagi remains silent. He says that nothing matters and says goodnight to Yuki. Azami Yanagi says goodnight to Kaede. The woman states that she cannot die because her body belongs to another person and explains that her soul cannot leave her body while it is alive. The girl says she doesn't want him to worry and asks him not to worry. Azami Yanagi reveals that he killed zombies every single day without purpose. He reports that all this is not for a noble purpose and is not about saving the survivors. If anyone survived, it would only be to their advantage. Azami Yanagi says he killed every zombie he came across, but that doesn't guarantee they didn't reach Oda and the others' hideout. He reports that after the densely populated area, he began to feel someone's gaze on him too rarely. He walks along a deserted street. Azami Yanagi reports that it's possible that these are survivors or entire shelters, but he won't get involved in it now. He says that contact with people was not important to him, and otherwise he would be on his knees begging to be allowed to stay. Azami Yanagi states that he didn't want to save people and would otherwise have cut down the zombies with full force without thinking about anything more. He explains that not everyone he saved was a good person, but if they turned out to be villains, his value system wouldn't allow those bastards to live. He explains that he wouldn't want to get into such a nasty situation again, where he would have to lie and leave those who… Azami Yanagi says it's already morning. He reports that he forcibly broke the lock and entered the shuttered shop. He reports that after clearing the area, he piled all the zombies into one pile and notes that there was probably a cafe on this spot before. A man reaches out his hand to a dark portal. Azami Yanagi pulls on the strap of her backpack, which begins to open. He reports that now all that remains is to waste time until night. Azami Yanagi says he can't understand why his body is so tired, even though he hasn't done anything special. He explains that he feels as if his strength has been drained, and this makes him uneasy. He remains silent, expressing surprise. The room is empty, with a few stools and hanging light bulbs on the bar counter. Azami Yanagi reports feeling the presence of two living people surrounded by a crowd of zombies. The guy swears and asks Takaru what they should do. Azami Yanagi reports that judging by their voices, these guys are still young or even children. He says that he won't have to take responsibility for them later. The girl says there are many things in this world that can't be explained, and she wants to learn more about them. She says that sometimes you just have to believe in what you don't understand in order to move forward. Azami Yanagi says, teach, and stands with his hand down. Then he looks forward. He tells them that if they can't get out, they will die, and explains that there is no exit in this place. He explains that there are no doors, windows, or ventilation, and that the air is gradually running out. The man says that they need to find a way out, otherwise they will all die. In the right panel, Azami Yanagi and a girl are preparing for battle, holding weapons. In the middle panel, two zombies are making noise. In the left panel, a metal door is sliding open. He says to come here, and the girl says to come in. He and the girl with bats are standing in front of a crowd of zombies. Azami Yanagi says he's not giving up and will continue fighting. He says to hurry up. He kicks the man. He and several other people run towards the opening gate of the building. Azami Yanagi informs them that if they can't open the door, they'll be trapped here forever, and explains that the door won't budge. The man, the girl, and Azami Yanagi lift the door. The man fights the enemy, who is punched in the face. He says to close it. Several men quickly close the metal door. The girl says that they saved them, and Azami Yanagi asks for forgiveness and thanks them very much. He hopes he wasn't hurt. The man reports that everything is fine. Azami Yanagi asks Momo how she is doing. She says that she is fine too, then thanks him. He says they'd better get out of here quickly, as they'll soon be able to break down the shutters. The girl and he are preparing for battle, holding wooden sticks. The man stands opposite them with a weapon in his hands. Azami Yanagi asks if this is really the only weapon they have, and the man says yes. He says that if they can't handle this, they'll have to use weapons, and the guy with the bat explains that they need to be prepared for any eventuality. Then they show a gloved hand holding a revolver. Azami Yanagi explains that this is a natural reaction to the gun, and now they are even more hostile towards him. He says it's hard to take this from the man who helped him, but there's nothing he could do about it. He says he'll give you one revolver and asks if you know how to use it. He explains that you need to load the cartridges into the magazine and fire. He then explains that if a critical situation arises, just shoot, and to handle the gun with extreme caution. Azami Yanagi is silent. The man and the girl are saying something unintelligible. Azami Yanagi asks what happened. The man replies that. He reports that he is still careful with him, but not as much as before. Azami Yanagi says thank you and says they were very helpful. On the other hand, this girl still has hostility towards him. Azami Yanagi says there's no need to thank him. The man explains that there are still zombies outside, so it doesn't matter. The man says that as long as they're here, everything will be fine. He reports that the shutters are completely closed and there are no signs of damage. Azami Yanagi informs them that if they go outside now, they'll become zombie dinner. Judging by their auras, the zombies are gradually scattering. The man with the gun listens silently. He says that Takuruhina says his name is Takuruhina, and this is Momo. Hakobi Momo says she is Hakobi Momo. Azami Yanagi informs them that because he helped them in that situation, he will have to take responsibility for their safety, and the question is how far he will go with them. He calls himself Yanagi Azami and tells them to call him whatever they want. He asks how he ended up here. The man explains that he was just wandering around aimlessly and stumbled upon it by accident. Then the man asks, what about him? Azami Yanagi asks where the person he is addressing is from, and the person he is speaking to explains that he just wandered in and asks if he is traveling alone. He says that they used to live in a shelter, but there was a zombie attack and they had to flee. From Azami Yanagi's story, he learned that the evacuation center was a school and it was quite fortified. The situation became tense due to food shortages and internal order began to collapse. It is reported that an infected person entered the area, and this led to the death of many people. Azami Yanagi reports that it appears they haven't seen their parents since the incident began, and explains that he's sorry to have to bring it up. The man says, yeah. He says that in any case, they are in no hurry. The man answers yes. Azami Yanagi says that they will stay here until everything calms down. He saved them and does not want them to die as soon as they go outside. He says not to worry, and the man thanks him and says that he doesn't know how to thank him. Azami Yanagi asks how old they are, and the guy says that they are high school students and are 16 years old. He remains silent. The man says that nothing special. Azami Yanagi says that he has a small request for his interlocutor, to which the interlocutor asks what it is. The guy asks to help them. He says okay. Azami Yanagi asks if they need to be taken to a safe place. The man says he knows where it is, and is sure it will suit them too. He explains that when cell phones still worked, they were able to communicate with Momo's parents, and that this village is quite far from the city. He says that Grandpa Momo lives in that village and runs a dojo, and that there are a lot of steps in that place, and he also says that many of the villagers evacuated there. Azami Yanagi asks him what he thinks, and asks him to take them there. Yanagi says he understands, but he has one condition. Azami Yanagi asks what it is. Yanagi explains that no matter what he says, Azami Yanagi must silently obey. He reports that when he said this, they immediately became wary. The girl says that they agree, and that's fine. He explains that it's a great start. Azami Yanagi says he needs to get a car and suggests they rest for now. The man responds with surprise. He says not to go outside under any circumstances. The man says that it was standing on the street and he just borrowed it, and the girl asks Azami Yanagi how he was able to find the car. He explains that he wanted to get to a place that's far away and without a car, and apologizes. He asks if they've ever wanted to find a community where people could come together. The man replies that he sometimes thought about it. Azami Yanagi and the girl remain silent. He informs that there is food there, and if they are hungry, they can take it. Azami Yanagi reports that there was dead silence for most of the journey, and they did not touch food. The man says it's not just pain, but something that can't be described in words, and that he can't stand it anymore. Azami Yanagi strikes a man in the head. He informs them that they will stay here for the night today, orders them not to leave him for a step, and not to leave this place on their own. A boy and a girl say Yanagi is amazing. The boy asks if Yanagi isn't afraid of getting infected by these people, and notes that he dealt with them alone. Azami Yanagi says he's used to cutting off zombie heads. The guy says they're used to it and asks if Azami Yanagi is the same way, since he's killed many zombies to survive. He says that if they hadn't saved them today, he and Momo would already be dead, and admits that they scare him. The man says that they were just lucky. Azami Yanagi informs them that they will continue their journey tomorrow at dawn, but for now they need to rest, and asks what about the man they are talking to. The man explains that he will be in the next room, as he is interested in what is happening outside, and says there is no need to worry about such things, but simply to restore. He reports that the door to the room is locked, and explains that the key is inside. Azami Yanagi says that if he can't find a way, he will die. He then explains that he can't allow himself to die because he has a goal he must fulfill. He says he wants to talk. Takeru asks what's wrong. Azami Yanagi says thank you for everything you've done, and tells her that Momo is incredibly grateful too. He says that they haven't reached their destination yet, and that when they are safe, they will say thank you. Azami Yanagi asks to hear it from Momo herself next time and apologizes. The man says he's joking and asks if that's all Azami Yanagi meant. Azami Yanagi explains that what he wants to say doesn't apply to Momo. He says that once upon a time it wasn't an infected person who was killed, but an ordinary person. The man turns to him and says that Azami Yanagi reports that this happened. The man reacts with surprise and then asks what Azami Yanagi was thinking about. He says that he wasn't thinking about anything then, and no matter what anyone said, it happened. He explains that he killed because he thought it was necessary, and adds that that's all. Azami Yanagi remains silent. The man says that Azami Yanagi is truly incredible, and asks why. Azami Yanagi explains that he hadn't thought of it that clearly, and addresses the man as Mr. Yanagi. He says that he killed too. Azami Yanagi explains that the two of them hid for a while and then decided to change locations when they came across a group of people. At the bottom of the stage, a girl is surrounded by several hands trying to grab her. He says that at that moment he had a gun in his hand, which he got while he was with Momo. Azami Yanagi says the other had no choice, so he killed because it was necessary. Then Azami Yanagi explains that it's the other way around. He says that Takeru tried his best, was prepared for this, and made the right decision. Azami Yanagi says the world won't be the same again, so it's all right, and that it's not like he enjoyed killing. The guy explains that praising him for killing people is somehow strange. The woman says she doesn't understand why. Despite being strangers and wary people, they are with her now. He reports that he feels a little better. Azami Yanagi asks if he didn't give him a gun recently, and then he immediately thought he could trust him. The man says that's only because of that. He says that although they helped, they could always leave later, but he went alone for the car. Azami Yanagi reports that they then protected them again and recently dealt with the infected as well. The woman says that even after everything that happened, Momo still doesn't fully trust her, but she thinks that with time she will open up. Azami Yanagi asks if the man wants to say that he trusts him completely, to which the man answers in the affirmative. He says he's returning the gun and apologizes for lying back then. Azami Yanagi tells them to stand still and asks them to give the gun to Momo, explaining that they only have one. He then tells them to make sure Momo is careful with it. The man remains silent, examining the gun. He says that he is someone who can be trusted and that he thought so. Then a hand is shown clutching an object. Azami Yanagi reports that when he confessed to Oda's murder, he was exiled, and now he can't believe he earned his trust by doing so. The rising sun can be seen against the backdrop of the mountains, illuminating the sky above residential buildings. Azami Yanagi says that he helped them anyway, which means he bears some responsibility. He declares that he will protect them until they reach safety, just as he did with Kaidi. When he and his companions reached the city, the first thing that caught their eye was this. Azami Yanagi reports that the bodies with split heads were heavily dissected and were more likely to have been cut than split. He says, "Grandpa Momo?" The guy asks if Suzukake-sensei really did this. The man says, "Well, let's go," and warns them not to stray too far from him. The girl and the guy stare ahead in silence. The sound of footsteps on a wooden floor. Azami Yanagi reports that a rope was stretched between the trees along the stairs, and explains that this was apparently an attempt to stop the zombies. He reports that he had felt someone's gaze on him for several minutes. Azami Yanagi says someone is standing. The man is aiming a gun. He says he just brought Takeru and Momo and asks if Suzukake-sensei is here. The guy explains that he is, but with some reservations. The man with the gun asks if they are from this town. the guy says, turning to Momo-chan to take the gun. Azami Yanagi reports that the man was no longer so hostile, and it seemed the goal had been achieved. The man asks if they know each other, and Azami Yanagi says yes. The girl tells her grandfather he's being too loud, and the grandfather loudly calls out for Momo. He says he's glad the girl is okay, and asks what happened if she was noisy. The girl abruptly pushes the man away, who yells, "Ah!" The man tells Suzukake-sensei he's glad to see him and calls, "Take over." The girl apologizes and starts talking. Azami Yanagi explains that it's nothing and suggests they celebrate openly. The girl remains silent. Azami Yanagi says, "Well?" The girl asks him to wait and where he's going. Azami Yanagi asks, he says it's safe here and he's no longer needed. The man tells Mr. Yanagi. Azami Yanagi asks if they're planning to stay here too, and the man explains that he just brought the two of them here. The girl asks him to wait and says she hasn't thanked them yet. He says he's not going to give up and that he has a plan. The man explains that if they work together, they have a chance to win. The girl and the guy listen to him attentively. The woman asks why Azami Yanagi is smiling, and he explains that it's nothing. The man asks if Azami Yanagi has somewhere to go, and he says he doesn't really. The man offers to let Azami Yanagi stay here, or at least let her thank him. The woman addresses Azami Yanagi. He says that now they have nowhere to rush in such a world, and adds, well. Azami Yanagi remains silent. The man says everything is fine. He brought them both here and advises them to take their time. The man says that if they're not careful, they'll die. The man explains that there are a lot of armed people in the area and they need to stick together. The man explains that they only have one weapon and it needs to be used wisely. The man says they need to find a safe place and wait for help. Azami Yanagi remains silent. The man explains that this means Taka's parents also had a hard time, but they both survived, and that's good. The guy tells Mr. Yanagi that he really helped them out, and the girl says that without him they wouldn't have been able to get here. Azami Yanagi says that Suzukake-sensei and Mr. Yanagi are amazing, and the infected don't scare him at all, and laughs. Suzukake-sensei explains that he was just helping and asks him to look up. Azami Yanagi explains that he was the one who cut that one out. The man reports that every few days the townspeople remove all the infected who come in, explains that he is not the only one doing this, and says that if that cut is good, it could have been him too. Azami Yanagi says it doesn't look like there are that many people here, and reports that his grandfather says the locals are scattered and evacuated to schools and other large areas. The man explains that it seems his grandfather is holding a class for him and says he went to the training hall. The man asks. The girl asks him if he will go too, to which he replies that, no. Azami Yanagi says, okay, fine, and the girl invites him to go with her. The girl pulls Azami Yanagi by the hand. He says he can't understand why his sword isn't suitable for training, and explains that he would like to use a real sword. The man explains that a real sword is too dangerous for training, and that it's better to use a wooden sword to avoid injury. A man says he can't live anymore because his body is aging and will soon die. Azami Yanagi says he shouldn't give up and must keep fighting. He says that he and the girl came here to talk. The girl explains that she wants to know the truth. Azami Yanagi says he came to watch, but it seems they're already all. The man apologizes and says that they quickly finished their morning class, then suggests that he try it. He confirms this and asks what. The man says that this is it. The woman asks if he'll take the risk, and Azami Yanagi says Takaru told him everything about how he handles himself in battle. Azami Yanagi explains that he doesn't want to risk accidentally injuring himself and suggests they play it safe. He reports that he heard the interlocutor and says so. Azami Yanagi asks why he's doing this. The man says he doesn't care about injuries and that no matter what Azami Yanagi says, he's ready to start. The man asks Takaru if he wants to watch too, to which Takaru agrees. The girl says she wants to too and invites Azamichi to join in. The girl says she wants to see her grandfather lose. The man expresses surprise. The man says that now Azami Yanagi won't get away with it. The girl says Azami Yanagi, and Azami Yanagi answers. He says, ew. Azami Yanagi says he has no chance and won't go on like this. The man begs for God's sake. The guy asks if the other guy is sure he doesn't mind. He says they only kept the bottle open because they were saving it for better times. Azami Yanagi tells him that now is the perfect age for the boy to try the delicious alcoholic drink. The boy explains that he doesn't know much about alcohol, and Azami Yanagi says that doesn't mean he doesn't drink at all. He says he's called his interlocutor and asks why. The man explains that he doesn't know where to start. Azami Yanagi says the other man wanted to talk about Takaru. The man says he'll start with him then. A man reports that little Takeru killed a man this morning. Azami Yanagi explains that he didn't say anything to the man who killed another to save Momo because scolding him was pointless, and he didn't even thank him. He says he did it to save his dear granddaughter. Azami Yanagi asks if he should have said thank you for. He says he can't sympathize, but he supported Takaru and believes he did the right thing. The man explains that he understands that sometimes there are hopeless situations and asks for understanding that Takaru is still a child, so he didn't want this outcome. He asks how the other man, Azami Yanagi, says he doesn't know if it's appropriate to talk about it, but he feels like even the concept of a child has changed in today's world. The woman says that at Takeru's age, many people leave their parents' nest and become adventurers, and the girl adds that it's exactly the same in another world. He explains that this may sound strange, but asks for support for Takeru and is sure that he still suffers from his actions. The man says that Momo does too. A man says Yanagi-kun is so kind. Azami Yanagi says he's wrong. He says that he brought them here only because he had to save them and warns them about this in advance, and also says that he felt some responsibility for them precisely because he saved them. The man says that this is the cookie. Azami Yanagi says he understands and will talk to Takaru again. The man asks him to do so. Azami Yanagi takes the cookie and eats it. He says that his interlocutor wanted something else. The man silently looks at the glass and brings it to his lips. The man says it's hard for him to ask Azami Yanagi for such a thing. He asks them to leave their territory. The man explains that they themselves told him not to rush, admits that it sounds selfish, but asks for understanding. Azami Yanagi says, haha, and apologizes, explaining that the man made such a face that he was already starting to worry. The man replies, haha. He says he almost said goodbye after bringing the boys home and asks them not to worry. The man reports that he was the one who detained. Azami Yanagi asks if he will tell you why he is being kicked out, to which the other man replies that of course he will. He reports that they were not refugees at all, and the man says that they were marauders. A man reports that when one of their shelters was destroyed, another man says they decided to take a terrible. Azami Yanagi reports that they began to kill them, and as a result of many wars forced them to flee the city. The man reports that from now on they had decided not to accept strangers into their lands. Azami Yanagi asks why he was told to stay and says he has to speak. The man explains it's because he brought his granddaughter home. The man explains that Momo and Takaru wanted him to stay and they couldn't just say goodbye to him, and also says that he understands why they liked him. Azami Yanagi says that he doesn't care when the other leaves, but his will is not the will of the entire city. The man says he tried to stand up for him, and some townspeople supported him, but ultimately decided he should leave. He says there's nothing surprising about that. Azami Yanagi says the problem is that townspeople are willing to fight with each other over such a stupid reason. He says he wants to make sure Takaru and Momo can stay here together. The man replies that, of course, they can. Azami Yanagi says it's not about the other person's feelings, but about what the townspeople will say. The man says he'll talk to them and asks them not to worry. He says that then he has nothing more to say. The man asks, what is? Azami Yanagi says that in this world, survival doesn't depend solely on luck and hopes. Takaru and Momo will understand this. He then says he'll definitely tell them. He says that this can't be, and the girl asks why him. Azami Yanagi reports that he talked with Takaru and Momo until late at night, although it was difficult to call it a conversation, and silence occupied most of their conversation. He reports that perhaps the situation was not very pleasant, but seeing the faces of people saddened by the farewell to the person they met only recently, he felt something akin to joy. The image contains no text or speech from the characters, only a house against a background of trees and mountains. Azami Yanagi says he won't fight an opponent who can't use a sword. The man explains he doesn't know how to fight but wants to learn. Azami Yanagi says he'll teach him from scratch. He reports that the next morning he visited the dojo, intending to fight, which he not only instilled with anger, evoked by memories of Lord Oda, but also hurt his feelings by driving him away. He explains that he did not do this at his grandfather's request, but Azami Yanagi says he doesn't need the equipment and says no thanks. He says he didn't plan on leaving beaten, so he'll start the fight. The man says he's underestimating him, but agrees. Azami Yanagi says he doesn't mind if the other guy is seriously planning to hit him. The man remains silent. He delivers a quick blow with the stick to the man. Azami Yanagi tells his grandfather to hit him and not think about anything, that he doesn't have to hold back. The man notices the speed and feels that Azami Yanagi is holding back. The grandfather allows the wounds to be left on the man. He says not to regret and to watch carefully. The man says that now. Azami Yanagi says he has no intention of giving up and that his strength will grow. The man declares that he is ready to accept the challenge and fight to the end. He says that he closed the distance without moving his body much, and from here, it may seem that he did not move at all, and also wonders if he has begun to take their fight seriously. Azami Yanagi explains that he doesn't intend to fight the opponent, but simply wants to demonstrate his superior technique. The man declares that he is ready to accept the challenge and asks for no effort. The man says that kendo usually doesn't end with one match. He says he's suggesting they stop. The man says what Azami Yanagi did was incredible. Azami Yanagi reports that he lost. The man explains that it's hard to even call it a proper match. The man says he knew he was a difficult person and says the townspeople made a fatal mistake in deciding to expel him. Azami Yanagi and a man bow to each other. Chapter 24, a man says he's invincible in this world. A man says he's returned from another world. Azami Yanagi says he's truly grateful to Yanagi-san. The man tells Takaru to forget it and take care of himself. The man tells Momo to take care of herself. Momo replies that she does. The girl asks Azami Yanagi if he's really leaving. He says to protect Momo, then puts his hand on the other guy's head. Azami Yanagi says that he will try to become as strong as his interlocutor. The guy says that it's good. He thanks her for the delicious food and says it's not worth it. The man thanks his grandfather for his concern, and the grandfather explains that he should be thanking him. Azami Yanagi says he's raising a toast to this handsome man too. He says he'll take care of the sword and admires its skillful craftsmanship. The man asks if he's sure he doesn't need a gun. He replies that he doesn't need one. The man explains that he shouldn't expect anything less. Azami Yanagi says he's leaving Takaru and Momo with another man and asks him to take care of himself, Grandpa. The man says his words may not be needed but still asks Yanagi to take care of himself. He says he's not worried about the other guy. The man says it's an interesting remark. The man smiles. Azami Yanagi tells him it's time to go. The girl tells him to be careful. The guy asks Yanagi not to die. He speaks well and wishes that his interlocutor does not get sick. Azami Yanagi reports that the stairs are closed. He explains that this is because there is a temple below, and it is forbidden to enter. The image shows a car moving quickly down the road. The engine sound is transmitted as a humming sound. Azami Yanagi reports that he feels a heavy gaze on him from all sides, and that he got into a car and left this city. He reports that Oda-san and Dead were able to maintain their sanity in a difficult situation and not succumb to criminal tendencies, and that it can be said that they are good people, although their characters are seriously different. Azami Yanagi reports that Oda-san would condemn anyone for murder and is willing to save everyone around him, even those he barely knows. He explains that his grandfather isn't above killing and, to save his town, is willing to abandon those who need his help. He says he can't say which of them is right, and explains that from the point of view of preserving his loved ones, his grandfather is definitely right in his beliefs. Azami Yanagi explains that he understands that rejecting a hand in need is only an act of self-preservation, but it can lead to dire consequences, and now the city is short of food. He explains what will happen when he is missed, and asks if they will simply kill strangers to protect their city. The man explains if they will become more marauders. Azami Yanagi respects Oda-san for trying to make amends for his past by helping strangers, and is confident that Oda-san himself understands that his past actions were not purely evil. He explains that he chose to help people instead of abandoning them, and he thinks that's incredibly cool. He explains that no one can change the fatal outcome of some of his actions, and that he doesn't want to suggest that all of Oda-san's attempts to improve will lead to anything good. Oda-san's rational decision not to leave the man who died at the hands of Azami Yanagi seems even more strange and incomprehensible to him in light of what he saw in his grandfather's city. He doubts that he will ever take the path of violence, and says that if he were as strong as he is, it would be a completely different story. Azami Yanagi says TC, then remains silent. He says he's not going to give up, even if it costs him his life. He then says he doesn't want any of his friends to get hurt because of him. Azami Yanagi reports that Oda-san and Lindau are even a bit similar here. They are both filled with a sense of justice and try to help other people, and are also unexpectedly gentle people. He reports that he is near Oda-san's town again, and that his conversation with his grandfather about the marauders has given him some ideas, and also explains that it seems Oda-san is still accepting refugees. Azami Yanagi reports that the marauders are taking advantage of Yuki, Kaidi, and other girls. He says that maybe he is too worried about them, but he had to check the current state of affairs in the city. Azami Yanagi reports that panic has broken out in the city, and people are trying to flee the streets. He explains that the situation is worsening and caution is needed. He informs that there are many shops and cafes in the area, and also explains that you can find everything you need for life here. Azami Yanagi reports that on the way he stopped at the store where he once met Kaide. He explains that the ground floor is almost empty of items, like generators and iron pipes, and hopes they found some use for them. He reports that he has arrived. Azami Yanagi asks how she is. The girl says that she just hopes she doesn't get sick again. He says he's only worried because being sick in their conditions is a real hassle. Then, he falls silent and turns to the door. Azami Yanagi reports that he doesn't feel any particular presence except for a couple of people. He says that they may have come here after he cleared the area of zombies. Judging by the condition of the road, you can easily move along it even without extra equipment. Azami Yanagi reports that although a sufficient amount of food will be needed, even an ordinary person can make this journey. The man says that Oda-san is already somewhere nearby, then the man takes off his helmet. The man hopes that everything remains unchanged. Azami Yanagi reacts sharply to something. The sounds of gunfire can be heard against the backdrop of city buildings. Azami Yanagi reports hearing gunshots and jumps from the roof of a building. He lands abruptly from a height. Azami Yanagi says it's impossible. The man expresses surprise. The man reports a huge hole in the building. The image contains no text or speech from the characters. It shows a car that has crashed through the glass wall of a building. A week had passed since Azami's death, and then new refugees began to arrive. Azami Yanagi reports that new refugees have begun arriving, and reveals that it was his son, Shu. He explains that not far from here, while they were searching for provisions, Akima accidentally stumbled upon the search party and, asking for refuge, brought Shu with him. He says there aren't any criminals left in the area, and now they can rest easy. The man reports that everything went smoothly, and they accomplished their goal. The guy explains that thanks to their efforts, the city has become safer. Since Ikima is a former soldier, he has a lot of experience, which he actively uses in sorties, and when carrying out dangerous work, Azami Yanagi says, explaining that it is just like he once. The guy asks how Dad is. The girl is sure he's fine, especially since Oda is with him now, and tells him that Kaidi's sister is. The girl says everything's fine, and explains that the guy himself said how cool his father is. Azami Yanagi reveals that this is Yuki's sister. The girl says that her dad is really very strong, and that being sick definitely won't defeat him. The woman places her hands on the boy's head. The boy says that she is Kaidi's sister. The woman looks forward. The girl asks for forgiveness and explains that she just flinched. The man says that the girl was praising her dad so loudly. The girl laughs. Azami Yanagi is silent. The girl is silent too. The right panel shows 3 people sitting at a table in a cafe. The left panel depicts a multi-story building. Azami Yanagi tells Shu to be quiet and asks if he's been good. The woman announces Ikam's return and is glad he's okay, while the girl says she's fine. The boy calls the man Daddy. The man explains that, by the way, it seems like the number of sick people is decreasing and there's almost no work. The woman asks the man if Shu did anything wrong, and the man replies that nothing happened. The woman says Shu behaved well, and the boy sighs. The man thanks him and says he's glad they're together. The woman explains to the girl that it's like having a little brother, and the girl asks if that's true. The girl says that there is no need to worry about them so much, and then confirms this with a short agreement. The guy tells them there's a cafe in the building where they can grab a bite to eat. The man explains that the cafe is on the 2nd floor and suggests they go up there. Azami Yanagi explains that after eating, they can take a look around and decide where to go next. A building is shown against the backdrop of rain. He says he decided to shower outside this time to feel the rain on his skin. The girl says it sounds strange, but interesting. The girl says she's already washed up and is now ready. The woman says she's also washed up and feels better now. Azami Yanagi explains they can start dinner, and everyone sits down at the table. He says he's glad they're all together. The girl explains that he eats too much, and the boy says he can't eat anymore. The man announces that the truck is already loaded and it's time to go. The man explains that they need to be careful and stay alert. Azami Yanagi says he understands and is ready to go. He says there are a lot of people in the area who don't want to be bothered and asks not to interfere in their affairs. The man explains that he just wanted to help and had no intention of harming anyone. Azami Yanagi announces that a new student has arrived at school and says he's very strange and acting unusually. She explains that all the students are discussing this new person and trying to figure out who he is. The guy asks if something happened. The man replies that yes. The man explains that something happened. Azami Yanagi says that refugees shouldn't be called that, and that the people who approached them weren't the most pleasant. He reports that they asked if they could hand over weapons but were refused. He reports that in exchange, they gave him some food, and they returned home peacefully. He explains that their feelings are understandable on the other hand, and hopes that even this small amount of help has softened their disposition a little. Azami Yanagi says the other person is just as trusting. The guy asks what's wrong, and the girl says nothing. The woman says that Azami would have said something similar to him if he were still with them, and it seems she wasn't the only one who thought so. The woman says that Yuki also smiled slightly. The girl says she can't express what she's feeling and doesn't know what to do. The man explains that this is normal and that she shouldn't rush into an answer. The girl says, "That's all." The man explains that he can't figure out what's causing this strange rustling sound in his chest. The guy says he is surrounded by beautiful girls. Azami Yanagi says Shu is a real alpha male. The girl explains to Yuki that he shouldn't tease Shu like that. Yuki says that's okay because it's Shu. Shu says it's okay. He says that Shu is a strong boy. Azami Yanagi reports that Akeda told them that Shu's mother died during the pandemic, and although they were unable to get him to elaborate, it's possible Akeda was forced to kill his wife when she became infected. The girl explains that she's certain something terrible happened. Perhaps Shu's mother was attacked directly. The girl reports that Shu has already fallen asleep and says that it's time for them to go too, Yuki. Yuki confirms this. Azami Yanagi explains that there's nothing in this world that can't be understood if you put in the effort. He explains that if a person can't understand something, it means they simply haven't tried hard enough. The girl explains that she wants to understand everything that's happening around her and is willing to put in all her effort to do so. The man says that. He says he's listening to Kaede, and Kaede replies yes. The girl says that he shouldn't take on too much, and that she is always there if he needs care. The girl says that Yuki is always taking care of me. Azami Yanagi replies that he could care even more. The girl is surprised. The woman says, okay, and the man thanks her. The girl speaks to Yuki. The adjacent panel depicts the ceiling of the room. Azami Yanagi tells Kaede that he doesn't understand what it is. The girl says nothing and wishes goodnight. He agrees and wishes goodnight to Kieda. The image contains no text or speech, only an image of the building. The girl expresses surprise. 3 people are lying on the floor under blankets. The boy and girl sit up abruptly. The car crashes into the wall, breaking the glass. The car crashes into the wall. Azami Yanagi opens the car door and presses the button. The girl says what's going on and asks what the man says it's all over now and he's going to kill. The man raises a gun near the open car door. The man demands that they surrender and warns that if they are good, they will not be touched, and then shouts to the others why they are silent. In the right panel, 3 girls sit on the floor in the hallway near the lockers, holding hands. In the left panel, Azami Yanagi announces that the story continues. A girl, a guy, and a woman are sitting on a bed. The girl asks what's going on. Azami Yanagi says she hears an evacuation signal. A girl reports an evacuation signal. An evacuation signal is heard in the shopping center parking lot. He says they're looters. The policeman warns Akema to be careful. The man tells them not to fuss, just as they were taught, and tells them to calmly follow the shelter. Several people go to the shelter, and the woman explains to her child to come with her. The guy calls the guys over. The woman and Azami Yanagi hear popping sounds, and the woman and the guy look in the direction of the sound. The woman says everything will be fine. The girl says they need to go upstairs quickly. A man in uniform stands by the stairs, and another man climbs them. The boy and girl look toward the stairs. The man says he's on duty outside in the parking lot tonight and orders her to be a good boy, sleep with the girls, and wait for him. The man tells Shu. The girl says, "Dad." The man smiles. The girl takes the guy's hand, who tells Shu. Azami Yanagi says that if he wins, the girl will have to grant him any wish. The girl says that if she wins, Azami Yanagi will have to grant her any wish. The girl says, "Stop." He says, "Shh," in surprise. Then the girl yells, "Shh," as he runs away. The man says to stop. It's dangerous there, and the girl calls Kaede. A guy is running, and a girl is running after him. The girl covers the guy's mouth with her hand and tells him to stand still and be quiet. The woman tells the boys to run back, and the boy calls Yuki. Yuki turns around. There's a loud sound of breaking glass, and the woman, Yuki, and the child react. A man with a gun demands that those inside get out. Another man stands next to him. The man says they've gone deaf. The girl explains that's not true and asks them not to panic. Azami Yanagi says they need to get out of here quickly. The woman explains that she's already prepared everything necessary for their escape. The guy with short blonde hair says they have nowhere to run anyway and asks why the other guy is worried. He says yes, he really is. In the next panel, 2 guys with guns are standing on the street. The woman tells Shu to sit quietly and be a good boy. The girl remains silent. A woman and a young man react to what's happening. The man with the gun yells at the man around the corner to raise his hands and go to base. The man with the gun remains silent. The police officer asks them to calm down. The guy says he's willing to listen to the terms, but the man remains silent. The man says, "Damn," and asks who this guy is. The man shoots the policeman in the neck. The girl says she can't believe what happened, and Azami Yanagi explains that it really happened. He says they could have taken him hostage and asks if they taught him to think with his head. The man expresses dissatisfaction, and the guy utters an interjection. The guy says all that's left to do is finish off the bastard, and then asks to show what happens. The woman says something unexpected happened. The girl says everything is fine and hugs the guy. A guy in a helmet stands on a roof and looks down at a street with parked cars and people. Azami Yanagi says he hears multiple shots from various pistols, and it seems the massacre has already begun. He explains that refugees have gathered on the roof, apparently taking refuge there during emergencies. All the sounds of the fight are coming from the parking lot. The looters didn't reach the roof. Our guys chose a good place to hide. Azami Yanagi says that he reports that, faced with the events happening right before his eyes, he was unable to immediately rush to help. Azami Yanagi explains that when he was at the police station during the incident with the semi-mandate group, he deprived Oda and the others of the experience appropriate to this world, and he used to think so, which caused internal conflict. He also reports hesitation before showing it. He says that perhaps by showing strength he will cause fear, or that lives will be lost, and asks that when you weigh it on the scales, which scale will outweigh? Azami Yanagi says he's been thinking about things that seem unthinkable, and that he's sickened by his own cowardice. He says he's had more than enough dirty experience at this point, and explains that these shots must be deeply etched into the minds of Oda and the others. A man falls from a height, breaking windows and furniture. The man continues to fall. A guy in a helmet stands holding a sword, looking at the broken glass and the car. Then he drops to one knee, leaning on his sword. A man with short hair says there's no shelter and he can be slowly cornered, and a hooded man with a gun says the guy is pretty resilient. Azami Yanagi says she hopes the women they saw on the roof are okay, and laughs. He says that if they had surrendered right away, everything would have been easier, and notes that they surrendered so easily they probably had a lot of supplies, which means they found a good place. The man with the gun says that it is clear. The man in the helmet says they're definitely marauders. The guy with the gun asks what it is. A guy in a helmet suddenly fires a gun. A man and a guy holding a gun react to the shot. The man says he doesn't understand what's happening, and the guy laughs. The man says that it is not bad and seems to be true, and also reports that from this conversation there is no doubt that they are scoundrels. The boy reports that in some ways it seems they have adapted to this world, and the man explains that these boys. The man says that they are ready to kill living people without hesitation if necessary. Azami Yanagi says they do this for their own desires and doesn't think it's good. He explains that, from his perspective, their spirit is even somewhat attractive. He says that. Azami Yanagi reports that they are. He then explains that, of course, he is prepared to be killed. He reports a moment. The man with the headband and the man with short hair scream. He strikes with a katana, causing their heads to come off and fall to the floor. The boy with the short hair says they can't let Azami Yanagi leave because he knows too much. The man with the disheveled dark hair says that if Azami Yanagi leaves, it will all be over. Azami Yanagi expresses surprise. A guy yells for someone to answer who's outside. The man reports that some strange guy is approaching from behind and demanding to shoot. The man expresses confusion about what the hell is going on. The man fires at the attacker, who then proceeds to hack several people to pieces. Azami Yanagi says the man is strange and has unusual expressions. The man asks her to wait. The man screams and raises his hands, then his head explodes. Azami Yanagi stands with two dismembered figures. The guy speaks up and asks not to kill him. The man says he doesn't intend to kill. Azami Yanagi's skill is called Continuous Battlefield. He informs that on the right there is an escalator from the main entrance, then a spare staircase in the back, and a multi-level parking lot. Azami Yanagi reports that the looters are likely attacking from 3 directions, and that they need to go up the escalator first. He explains that they've set up a defensive line on the 6th top floor in front of the restaurant area where the stairs lead to the roof, and Odai and the others are likely there. The guy says that when killing the invaders, you should limit yourself to cutting off their heads. The man explains this with surprise. Azami Yanagi admits he wasn't cool enough and was so angry at them that he couldn't even imagine such a thing. He explains that cleaning them up would be problematic if, as before, he cut them in half and scattered the entrails. The man says it's a special forces helmet. The man says it seems he's already registered in a permanent battlefield and wonders if it's an ally. The man explains that everyone he knew from his time in the shelter is registered and that it feels like a permanent battlefield, but he can't just hack everyone down because... The guy says it won't be hard to spot the invaders based on the situation, as they use complementary words and matching actions. The man yells that this is bullshit and turns to the guy. In the top panel on the right, a helmeted man with a sword parries several shots. On the top left, a quick vertical descent is depicted. Below, a helmeted man delivers a sword strike to Azami Yanagi's head while the man says, "Crack." Police officers from the upper floors look on with hostility and fear. A man in a helmet stands on the ground. Azami Yanagi reports that among the many bodies, there is one suspicious person standing among them, and it is no wonder that they are looking at him with such eyes. He says he's got a real thirst for murder and could be caught at any moment, but his former comrades look at him with hostility, and that can't help but make him feel it. He explains that it's all over here. Then he says he can do it. The sound of footsteps on the stairs. A guy with a gun is yelling at someone to surrender. A man with a gun is also demanding surrender. A man in a helmet is telling them to stop them at any cost. Two men report to prevent the enemy from reaching the roof. Two armed soldiers respond, "Yes, Oda," and open fire. The man says everything is fine, and the man makes an ear sound. The man jumps down and takes cover behind the shield, making a thumping sound. The man makes a gunshot sound and an explosion sound. In the top right panel, a man announces that he will cover the others. In the middle right panel, a man is shot in the shoulder. In the bottom right panel, Azami Yanagi and another man shoot at enemies falling down the stairs. In the left panel, two men run up the stairs. The man says he doesn't intend to shoot and explains it's just a warning. He says if he doesn't stop, he'll be killed. The man with the helmet expresses fear and says he doesn't want to die. A man kicks another man in the head as he leans forward, with another man standing nearby. Azami Yanagi stands with a sword, three fallen opponents lying nearby. He explains that he won't kill them if they surrender. The man in the helmet remains silent, watching Azami Yanagi. The man is silent, and he says that we need to stop. Azami Yanagi tells Oda that he has a terrible face. Oda says they haven't seen each other in a while and asks if it's Yanagi. Yanagi explains that it is him. He reports that this is happening now and asks why he is here. The man remains silent. The man reports that confusion and relief, as well as a shadow of pain, were visible on the other man's face. The man explains that Oda and the other police officers had to fight the looters, otherwise these merciless creatures would have seized everything long ago. It is reported that at this very moment most of them today have wounded and killed living people. The man says that perhaps this is what Oda is thinking. Azami Yanagi explains that he sees a sea of death before his eyes, and now he's overwhelmed by feelings that have no outlet, even if it was necessary. He too has become part of it. Azami Yanagi says he's already killed those at the escalator and asks. He says he can't afford to lose. Then he closes his eyes. The man reports that the 6th floor of the parking garage was initially completely blocked from the front and back, and there are no signs of entry yet. Azami Yanagi says that Kotono and Kaidi have not yet evacuated, and two of his subordinates have gone after them, but there is still no contact with them. The husband. The guy says there is no time and asks one question. The man asks if new refugees have arrived since he left. The man reports that there are only two people, a boy of about 10 and his father. The boy also hasn't evacuated yet. The father was standing guard in the parking lot, but the connection was lost. Azami Yanagi says that means everyone else is the enemy and asks if that's true. The man replies that he understands. He tells Oda that she needs to focus on defense, and he will take care of the rest. In the hallway, a man announces that he has no intention of leaving the looters alive. The man runs down the hallway with a weapon. Azami Yanagi looks forward, holding a sword. He reports that, thanks to Oda's information, he learned about new fugitives and says that they need to kill every last one. Azami Yanagi reports that one is a child and the other is likely already dead. He explains that then there's no need to stand on ceremony with those below the 5th floor. All that remains is to learn the fate of the 5 missing. A man in a helmet reacts to what he heard. Several presences surrounded the two. Azami Yanagi reports that they appear to have been discovered and are now hiding. He explains that they are two of Oda's subordinates. The man claims it is the same one and orders him killed, while the other man calls out to him. Two men in protective helmets and masks are surprised and scream. He tells them to stay in cover while he goes to look for Kaze, Yuki, and the child. The men express surprise upon recognizing him. The guy says he can't afford to lose because it would mean death. Azami Yanagi notices someone approaching and realizes that they are not Oda's subordinates, after which he expresses irritation. The woman reports that most of the marauders have already been eliminated, but the survivors apparently noticed her. The man explains that they most likely wanted to get their hands on the women, meaning they wouldn't just kill them. A man asks to be alive. The man reacts sharply to something. The guy says that this reaction is the living Kaidi and Yuki, and another one is probably that same child. Azami Yanagi reports that someone is here somewhere. He then walks forward, hearing footsteps. A man is shown lying on the ground at the bottom left. At the bottom right, Azami Yanagi looks forward wearing a helmet. The man says he can't believe it happened and explains that he was injured and can no longer serve. Azami Yanagi reports that an attack took place at this location and explains that 2 people are lying unconscious and 1 girl is sitting against the wall. He says that if he can't win, he will die. There is blood visible on the girl's hand. A girl reports facing a harsh reality. A man explains something to a boy while hugging him. The man says he doesn't understand what reinforcement means and asks what they should do. The text states that this happened several dozen minutes ago. The man reports that the connection was lost, and Azami Yanagi says that the connection has been restored. A guy says that some strange guy has appeared and they need to go help. A woman asks who the strange guy is. The man replies that who the hell knows, but they were told to drop everything and go immediately. The woman says that it looks like they really panicked. The man asks if there is a connection. Another man shouts and demands an answer. The guy tells them to hurry up. Azami Yanagi replies that he understands. He says everything will be fine and asks Shu if she can be quiet. The woman remains silent. Shu nods. The girl apologizes. Azami Yanagi lowers her head. The man stands nearby. He says everything is fine, placing his hand on the boy's head. The girl calls the boy Yuki. The man expresses bewilderment. Azami reports that he is definitely alive. The girl tells Azami. Azami Yanagi asks the girl what she means, and she tells him what it is. The man takes a step. 3 people watch as the man retreats into the room. The girl reacts sharply. The girl says it's a police officer. The man says he's a police officer. The police officer reports that something unexpected has happened. Azami Yanagi, the girl, and the boy express surprise. The girl says it's about Yuki. The man says he's realized something and is going to take action. The girl says, "We need to run." She starts to say a word, but stops. Azami Yanagi says, "If this continues, Yuki," the girl suddenly lunges at the man. The man looks on in surprise. The girl sharply hits the man on the head. The man covers his face with his hand. The girl grabs the gun. The man raises his hand sharply, and the girl holds the gun with a determined expression on her face. The girl explains that even if you're hit in the head, you shouldn't relax, and if you stop moving, you need to finish him off with another shot. Azami Yanagi says the girl acts as he taught her. The girl suddenly strikes with her hand. The girl says ha and ha ha. The man apologizes, saying that they cared about them so much, were worried, and came for them. Azami Yanagi says it's good the girl was able to protect them, and the girl confirms it. The girl explains that she succeeded, but her hands are still shaking and hot. The girl says it's hot. The woman tells Kaze, and he says it's his sister. Kaze and he react to this. The girl shows a wound on her hand, with blood. Azami Yanagi notices the movement and snaps his head around. He quickly approaches the man holding the gun and attempts to disarm him, while the man holds the other man back. The woman says that if he wants her to surrender, he should kill her first. The man in the helmet says he doesn't intend to kill her. The woman says, "Azami?" The girl tells Senpai. The woman says she hasn't seen him for a long time, but the man remains silent. The girl says that Azami is indeed alive. The man says that in general he finished off almost all the marauders, and there is no need to worry about them. The girl says what's more important, and Azami Yanagi asks if Senpai was finished off. He asks if he was bitten. The girl explains that Kaede protected her and that she ruined the clothes Azami gave her. He says it's not important and asks her not to worry about it, then calls the girl by name. The girl says that she was able to kill the infected and asks for praise. The man asks if the girl protected Yuki and the child, then says that she did well and puts his hand on her head. The girl says she was bitten and starts to explain it and then starts crying. The girl says she didn't know her mother was in so much pain and that her mother probably felt the same way. She asks Azami to let her ask for one thing, explaining that she actually wanted 2, but he's already stroked her head. The girl says that we need to talk. Azami Yanagi asks, "So what?" The girl says he will kill her. He says he won't kill her. A woman says she doesn't want to become a zombie and can't commit suicide. A man tells her she's too weak and good for nothing, and the woman explains that it's true. The woman with the child says she understands, the guy in the helmet says he does, and the girl agrees. Azami Yanagi addresses a girl named Kaede. He announces that he has opened a portal to another dimension. The girl looks at the portal with surprise and alarm, while the man and woman watch with worried expressions. The girl carefully reaches for the portal, which begins to suck in the object. Azami Yanagi tells him to drink this first, and asks if the girl didn't promise to obey him in everything. He explains that he'll tell her later. The girl, surprised, calls him senpai and says that now is not the time. The woman asks if she should just drink it, to which he confirms and hands her the bottle, adding that he hasn't tried it himself, but they say that. A man in a helmet holds a girl in his arms and tells her to calm down and not resist. The girl makes a noise expressing discomfort or resistance. The girl says the taste is very bitter and asks what it is. Azami Yanagi explains that it's an elixir from another world, a rare compound created from the tree of the gods. The supply for the battle with the demon was never used. It lay idle in the inventory. The woman says she doesn't know how this will affect the people of this world or how to explain it. The woman breathes heavily and says she feels uneasy, then notices a wound on her arm from which blood begins to ooze. The girl says the wound has healed. Azami Yanagi reports that the wound has healed, but frankly, it's not a guarantee that this will stop the transformation. The girl explains that this medicine can prevent zombie infection, but the consequences are also unknown. He explains that he understood the feelings and readiness of his interlocutor, but since she drank it, he will not kill her as long as she remains human. Azami Yanagi explains that if this doesn't work, she'll become a zombie and then he'll be forced to kill her, then asks if she agrees. She replies yes. A stormy night begins. Azami Yanagi says that if they can't find a way, they'll have to abandon the case. The man explains that they have no choice but to take the risk. The boy says they need to prepare thoroughly and think through every step. The man explains that everyone must be prepared for any eventuality. Azami Yana. The man says that all this and asks if the interlocutor wants to say that Yanagi did it. One man says he finds it hard to believe, while another man explains that the fact is that all the attackers were dead. Azami Yanagi reports that he personally witnessed Yanagi wipe out everyone in the blink of an eye at the emergency stairwell. The man explains that this is true. He reports that his subordinates guarding the elevator said the same thing. Two police officers listen silently. Azami Yanagi first thanks Yanagi and then explains that if it weren't for him, they most likely wouldn't have been able to protect everyone. He says that he can do it that way. The boy says that if they can't find a way, they'll have to give up on the case. The man explains that they have no other choice because the situation is too dangerous. The woman says they have to try again despite the risks. Azami Yanagi says he has an idea that might help, but it requires a lot of effort. Two men in protective helmets report that Oda's men approached immediately after this, and he says that he told them to hide in case the marauders were still alive, but it seems they couldn't sit still. He says that when he saw the mountains. Kaze reports that she seemed to be holding back the nausea by covering her mouth, and Azami Yanagi says that Yuki even threw up a little. The man reports that everyone who walked with him looked at him with disbelief. He explains that when he confessed to leaving the piles of corpses, they went to check on those who were supposed to stand guard in the multi-story parking garage, and after that, along with the people. Azami Yanagi reports that, unfortunately, the man reports that the man was a police officer who was on duty there. The father of the child Yuki was holding, and the child were reportedly found dead. Azami Yanagi explains that if they want to survive, they need to unite and trust each other. The girl and woman listen attentively, the girl placing her hands on her chest. The man and woman stand next to the girl, all focused on Azami Yanagi's words. He says he can't believe it happened. Azami Yanagi, upon hearing the news, couldn't hide his shock, but he didn't burst into tears or scream. He says he was already prepared for this, perhaps even in that room. The girl says, The man is silent. He's silent. The girl turns to Oda with a request to explain normally what is happening. Azami Yanagi reveals that the story about Senpai's death was a lie. The girl asks why he did that. The man listens silently. He says that it was he who asked Oda. The man expresses bewilderment. The girl says she doesn't understand why it was done on purpose. Azami Yanagi says there were various circumstances, and how can one explain it? The woman tells Yukinoshi it's her fault. He says it's his fault. Azami Yanagi announces that he has exiled Yanagi. The man asks why and asks for the full story. He reports that there is nothing in this place that could help. Oda told everyone present. The boy reveals that he killed the man who attacked Kaze at the police station, admits to having killed many people before, and that he said he would kill again if it happened again. The man explains that this is why Oda exiled him. Azami Yanagi says he made the wrong choice, and no matter how much he apologizes, it can't be fixed. He also wants to thank, and most importantly, he believes that Oda's decision was fair, and reports that he had already thanked him earlier. The man says that's not the case. He always thought something was wrong after Yanagi disappeared. The man says that when they went to the hardware store, there were so many supplies on the ground floor that one person definitely couldn't carry them all. The man reports that since that day, Azami Yanagi reports that there were many infected people with severed heads lying on the side of the road on the streets. He is silent. The man says that he cannot say anything. Azami Yanagi says that when he instantly killed those guys before his eyes today, watching them die, he realized that all the infected outside were also Yanagi's doing. He reports that he was convinced of this. He says that's why Oda made that face when he looked at him at the emergency stairs, and that's what he was thinking about it. Then he says that's it. Azami Yanagi says it was probably the same with the shopping center and all those supplies. The man says that they owe Yanagi so much, and yet, Azami Yanagi says he did it because he wanted to, and no thanks are needed. The man thanks him and says, "Thank you, Yanagi, anyway." He says there's nothing to be done. The man says he knows an apology won't get him anywhere and asks what he should do. Azami Yanagi says that if anything, he would like Oda to become a little more suitable for this world, and that is enough for him. The man speaks to Yanagi, but he remains silent. Azami Yanagi says they can't afford to lose because then their lives will end. The man says they must unite and act as a team to win. He says, "Listen, Oda." The man expresses bewilderment. Azami Yanagi says that he was also wrong and asks for forgiveness. The man remains silent, then says that Yanagi has nothing to apologize for. Azami Yanagi says he hid this power, then says no. The guy says he's silent. The man explains they can't afford to make a mistake. Azami Yanagi reveals that what he told Oda that day was true, but he didn't tell everything. He says he was afraid to show this power. Azami Yanagi says the words just flowed out of him, and then he says that he was hiding an incredible power, impossible in this world, and with the help of this power, he destroyed that entire semi-criminal group. The girl and Azami Yanagi stare ahead in silence. The man says that this made him even more afraid to show his strength. He says he hasn't always had this much power. The girl asks her senpai if he's always had this much power. Azami Yanagi says, "You may not believe it, but he gained this power shortly before the pandemic." He reports that, a few days before the pandemics began, on that cold night, he was transported to another world and also told about it. Azami Yanagi reports that he killed many of his own kind, though it was inevitable in that world. The girl and the man listen. He says he spent 3 years there, and when he returned, it turned out that a month had already passed since the start of the pandemic, and adds that it sounds like nonsense, but it's all true. Azami Yanagi says that the fact that he killed so many people was also connected to what he experienced there. The man says that yes, that's exactly it, but the girl says she doesn't want him to do that and asks him not to touch her. He explains that he didn't mean to hurt her and just wanted to check if everything was okay. Azami Yanagi says he feels no reluctance to kill people, and that hasn't changed. He says that he's too used to killing, and therefore, the man turns to Yanagi and asks him to listen. Azami Yanagi says he understood what the man meant after today's events. The man reports that 3 people are dead and there are wounded. The man says that in this world as he had become, he lacked determination. The man says he understands that saying this now is terribly selfish. He explains that he learned the hard way that senseless anger must be dealt with harshly. The guy says that they could work together here again, and Azami Yanagi says that he offers to work together here. He says that if someone else wants it, he'd like them to become leaders. He then explains that he's not the type to be a leader, but generally respects Oda as a leader, except for his softness. The man says he'll work on it and calls the situation dire. Azami Yanagi asks if that means the man's answer is yes, and the man replies that if everyone else is okay with it, then yes. He says that it would be perfect for him, adding that there's also Kaede. The man asks where Kaede is. The girl tells Oda and the others that she hasn't told them yet that Kaede was bitten. Azami Yanagi says that he has already told about the other world, about the box with items, and about the elixirs that he brought from there, and is going to explain it all. He says that he will tell you later. The man says that he understood, and that's okay. Azami Yanagi announces that he'll be joining them. The man explains that he needs to apologize to everyone first and that he'll be joining them, then asks for forgiveness. The man says that, in any case, "Welcome back, Yanagi." He responds with a greeting. Azami Yanagi delivers a powerful kick to a truck. He reports that after he finished reporting and apologizing to the other refugees and the police, he turned his attention to providing security at the shopping center. Azami Yanagi reports that the remnants of the looters could still be hiding inside, or zombies, attracted by the sounds of gunfire, could have entered from outside. He reports that he used his sense of perception to explore every corner to ensure safety, and by blocking the stairs and entrances on each floor, he used machines and other objects to construct barricades that would be impossible to construct manually, strengthening the defenses of the center. He explains that while it is possible, they reportedly worked with refugee volunteers to move bodies left in the center to a multi-story parking garage. Azami Yanagi reports that Oda also gave this order to the refugees, apparently to make them realize the determination required to survive in this world. He explains that the reason he was exiled and that he killed the looters, although he didn't force anyone, many refugees volunteered to help, and he couldn't help but think that perhaps he had underestimated these people a little. The man and the girl discuss Yanagi being a murderer. Azami Yanagi says that everything happened as expected, but the woman says that Yanagi saved them anyway, didn't he? He says that's enough. He touches his face with his hand. Azami Yanagi says he can't afford to be weak. The man explains that if he isn't strong, he won't be able to protect those he cares about. Azami Yanagi declares he's willing to fight for that. The guy says he couldn't believe he was actually coming and thanks him for coming. He explains he couldn't help but come because it was a promise. The man, the girl, and the guy smile. The girl says she's happy. Azami Yanagi says he's happy too. The man explains everything went well. He apologizes and says it took quite a while. The girl greets Azami and wishes him a safe return, and another girl greets him and calls him senpai. Azami Yanagi asks if everything is okay. The girl says that so far everything seems to be fine. Azami Yanagi says that it is good, and then okay. During the work, Kaede was isolated in the 6th-floor staff room, with Yuki monitoring her. She was instructed to immediately report any changes by radio. About 6 hours had passed since the bite, but Kaede showed no signs of zombification. Yana Azami. Azami Yanagi says it was right to show him his father's body, but the woman says it was his wish. He explains that to process his father's death, he cried until he had no strength left and fell asleep. He explains that Yuki and Kaede are also very exhausted. Kaede could become a zombie, and Yuki was watching her. After everything they've been through, it's only natural. Azami Yanagi explains that the tension should have only increased their fatigue and asks Yuki to forgive him, saying that he will look after her while Yuki can rest for now. The girl says everything is fine and she volunteered to keep an eye on Kazde. He says he has no urgent matters at the moment and if anything happens he'll ask her again, so he advises her to rest for now. The woman says, "See you then, Kaede." Kaede says she understands. Azami Yanagi suggests Kaze take a break and Kaze agrees. She confirms to Yuki that she will do so later. He says that he will help the girl get up and takes her hand. Then he supports her, helping her get up from the chair. A guy asks a girl if she's afraid of him. Then the guy approaches the girl, who is sitting on the couch. The girl looks at the guy silently. Azami Yanagi says she's not afraid, and the man asks why. He says that he has killed people and does not feel anything about it, and also reports that he can easily kill a person with his bare hands. Azami Yanagi touches another person's hand with his hand. The girl says that she knows that Azami won't use this power without a reason because she knows it. Azami Yanagi says that, of course, it's natural that he doesn't feel anything when he kills people, and it's natural to think that such a person is scary. The boy reports that the people who attacked this place today felt nothing, killing for their own desires. The girl says that when she hid there, she was very scared. The girl says that Azami is not like that and explains that he used his power to protect them and only killed because there was no other way. The girl says she doesn't think Azami is scary and knows he won't hurt anyone with his power, adding that she believes in him. Azami says he understands and asks to be called Azami-san. The girl sheepishly says, and confirms that she believes in him. The girl says, and Azami Yanagi explains that if she becomes infected, the girl asks him to kill her properly. He says he understands. Azami Yanagi invites the girl to snuggle a little closer. The girl looks at him silently. He says not to worry, he's nearby. The girl replies yes. Azami Yanagi says it's okay to sleep, it's okay. The girl explains that she's a little scared and says she can't sleep because she might wake up feeling different the next moment. The woman says that Yuki's words, "see you later," were likely also filled with anxiety about whether they would actually be able to meet again. The woman explains that, judging by the time since Tayukas, zombification should have been prevented, but it's not surprising that he's afraid. The girl says that even if she wakes up suddenly, like that day, Azami will disappear again, and that won't happen again. Azami says he'll be there. The girl explains that when they sit like this, it reminds them of their time at the hardware store. Azami confirms this. The girl explains that back then, Azami Yanagi says yes. The girl explains that it was enough for her that Azami was there, but he asks for forgiveness. The girl explains that when she was told of Azami's death, she was very sad, but now she is happy. She says that she doesn't blame Azami and wants to say that everything is fine. Azami Yanagi asks if the girl is happy. The girl confirms that she is happy and explains that Azami Yanagi said he would kill her if she became infected, so now she will be with him again. He promises. The girl agrees. The girl says she's awake. He strokes her head. Azami Yanagi reports that the girl was very tired. The girl explains that she had fallen asleep. She remained silent, looking at her hand. The girl says that, judging by Azami's appearance, his body is fine, but he needs to be observed further. She asks if he was bored. Azami says he was always there and thinking about different things, so everything is fine. The girl confirms this with the word good. The guy says he's been thinking about the future. Then he reveals that now that he's unlocked his power, there are two main options to help everyone. Azami Yanagi explains that the first step is moving the base, because in this world, you can't live on canned food forever. He advises that the foundation for self-sufficiency must be laid in advance, since if you act after supplies run out, it will be too late. He then explains that the second step is cooperation with the government. He says that despite his feelings, he needs to discuss this with Oda and the others. He explains that, frankly, due to his experience in the other world, he doesn't really want to. Azami Yanagi says that, in any case, before doing anything, they need to keep an eye on the situation at the mall in Kaidi. He explains that while the girl was sleeping, Yuki came by to check on her, and since Kaidi was fast asleep, he told Yuki to get more rest too, Yuki says. The girl explains that before the world became like this, she only saw him as an annoying junior colleague, but while she was gone, she took care of Kaze. The girl asks if Yuki is truly wonderful. The man replies that she probably is. The girl reports that Yuki, like Kaze, is gradually growing up in this new world. The girl makes a sound that expresses surprise or fear. Azami Yanagi asks the girl if she wants something to eat. The girl says she has a stomachache. Azami points to the black hole and says it's truly amazing. The girl asks if it's a box with objects. She laughs and asks if Azami is a wizard after all, right? Azami replies that he's not. The girl asks if that's true. Azami Yanagi asks if the item box is magic and says that the girl's healing of his wound could also be considered magic. The girl explains that she doesn't know how to use something as convenient as magic. He says that if healing a wound is considered magic, then his old comrades used it, and he asks to thank them. He explains that in that other world, Robelia created a box with items for him, and Iris and Rindo suggested that he store it in it. Azami Yanagi says that everyone entrusted him so he could use them for Kaide, and he's actually grateful to the three of them. The woman asks Azami, addressing him by name. Azami apologizes and explains that he simply remembered something from another world. The girl says that she understands, but is very grateful to Azami and adds that she is very, 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 very grateful to him. The woman says that's understandable. Azami Yanagi says that's how they'll eat and turns to a woman named Azami. The girl says she wants to know more about the guy and the people he was traveling with. He asks if he can ask. The girl asks about Azami, if she can ask a question, and Azami replies that she will answer as best she can. Azami Yanagi reports that they had a similar conversation at the hardware store. He says things are different now and suggests they talk over food, inviting them to ask anything. The woman says that back then Kaid was just a girl he accidentally saved. The girl accepts and acknowledges Azami Yanagi is not afraid of his strength or spirit and is now the person he wants to protect. The girl says she's important to him. He says there are no secrets this time. The connection deepens through many twists and turns. Azami Yanagi says, "Phew." He's sitting on the roof of a building at night in the city. Azami Yanagi reports that it's been a week since the mall was attacked by looters and he went outside alone. It's unclear whether Kaid has fully recovered, but she feels even better than before. Azami Yanagi says that he thought he would stay by his side if Kaide wanted him to, but in the end, she walked him out herself. He reports that Yuki and he said that he might not have it for long. The man says he told Oda not to accept any more refugees, explaining that he was unhappy, but that nothing could be done. He explains that after the recent attack, the number of combat-ready police has dwindled, and that if the enemy disguises itself as refugees, it will create problems. Azami Yanagi says he has prepared neighboring buildings as a compromise. He says that the goal this time is to find out where the self-defense forces that disappeared from that military base went so that they can be used as a temporary shelter for real refugees, and when he returns, he will be able to evaluate them with a sense of hostility. Azami Yanagi reports that when Oda-san spoke with Shu's father, a former self-defense force member, he shared his thoughts on the fact that the self-defense force rescue operation never happened again. He explains that the first possible reason is that we could have simply been abandoned, but considering they had already sent a helicopter, it is reported that there is a possibility that they were completely destroyed. Azami Yanagi reports that they likely encountered a situation that forced them to abandon the base, as well as the situation with fuel, food, and the refugees already there. He explains that the chain of command may have changed, and if they moved to another base, he reports that these were Shu's father's assumptions. Azami Yanagi reports that his further reasoning sounded convincing and plausible. He explains that this time he decided to scout out another base, as there might be some clue there. Azami Yanagi explains that when he returned to Japan from another world, he decided to avoid it if possible. He says that if he reveals his power to the state, then he will simply be used, just like in that world. He adds a point. Azami Yanagi is silent. He stands on the roof of a building, sword in hand, looking down at a group of people standing on the ground. He reports that there are suspiciously few zombies for a densely populated area and asks if the self-defense forces have destroyed them. Azami Yanagi remains silent. The girl says that the body count is too low then. Azami Yanagi explains that the closer they get to the base, the more zombies there become. He says he doesn't understand why there are so many of them if it's far from the city. Azami Yanagi explains what's going on. Then he explains what else is going on. A guy falls into a crowd of many hands reaching up. Azami Yanagi reports that he has no desire to deal with them honestly. He reports that judging by the situation, it is unlikely that the base is in order, and when he was heading to that base earlier, there were traces of battles with zombies, but the situation was not that dire. Azami Yanagi reports that he has reduced zombie battles to the necessary minimum and reached the required base. He reports that he is ready. A man leaves a building. A man walks down the street. Azami Yanagi reports that there are no people or even zombies in this place, unlike the previous base, and explains that it is obvious that this place was abandoned deliberately. He reports that all the supplies have disappeared without a trace, almost all the weapons have been taken, and only light vehicles remain. He explains that the self-defense forces from this base have moved to another, although this base and the previous one are not much different geographically or in terms of population. Azami Yanagi says he understands and says the word time. Back then, only a month and a half had passed since the panic began, and now it's been about 3 months. He reports that over time, many people have probably turned into zombies in densely populated cities, and it's impossible to simply survive like Grandpa Momo. Zombies roam in search of the living and react to the appearance and voices of the living. The man reports that if they don't have this, they move to places with bright lights or loud sounds. The man reports that their next target hasn't been determined yet. He explains that it's a place where firearms are used to protect the base. Azami Yanagi reports that he saw traces of explosions on the way here and explains that it should be very effective for zombies, but it also attracts new zombies from afar. He says that if the assumption is correct, most likely the self-defense forces have moved to places with a lower population density, or to bases in those regions, and therefore he will have to continue to look for their traces. Azami Yanagi says it's not something he really wants, and adds, well, on the roof of the building, a man announces that this building is the headquarters of the organization that controls the city. He explains that from this location, they manage all operations and maintain order. He explains that the building is well protected and has multiple levels of security. The girl tells Azami that she's glad he's back. The left panel shows a foot taking a step. Azami Yanagi explains that he can't afford to lose because then he'll stop being himself, and he says he has no intention of giving up. The girl says he's always been like this, and Azami Yanagi replies that it's true. The woman says she can't understand why he did this and says she doesn't want to talk to him anymore. He explains that he didn't mean to hurt her and asks for forgiveness. The girl remains silent. The man says they need to look at possible locations first, and Azami Yanagi says he picked up a map from the bookstore. He reports that there are many people in the area who don't want to be seen. He explains that this place is ideal for such cases. The man explains that one can hide here and remain unnoticed. Azami Yanagi asks Yuki why she suddenly wanted to talk alone. Yuki says, and starts talking. A girl tells her senpai that he is her senpai and asks if it is true. Azami Yanagi says that Yuki's true intention is. The girl reports that when they met at the police station, she thought something was wrong. The man remains silent. Azami Yanagi understands why the girl wanted to hide his power and says that if he had such a power, he probably wouldn't know what to do with it. The girl says she assumed it was because of the pandemic, but now Azami Yanagi. The man says there is only one door in the house and it is locked. He explains that the door is unlocked and suggests checking. Azami Yanagi reveals that after visiting another world, he killed someone every day. In the next panel, Azami Yanagi stands with a bloody spear. He reports that he killed not only monsters, or those called demons, but also human robbers. Azami Yanagi says that people who joined the demons, or people from hostile countries, if such days continued, it is no wonder that he broke down a little. He had this question: is he himself? Azami Yanagi tells him that Yuki is right, and he's probably not the same person the girl knew. The girl explains that Yuki is the only one who knew the old him. The boy tells his senpai. The girl says to senpai, The woman says that Azami Yanagi, despite his grumbling, always cared for her like a kind senpai and treated her well even after the internship ended. Azami Yanagi says he was her mentor and that she is his junior, which is natural. He is silent. The girl silently looks at him. Azami Yanagi says that when he returned to this world, it's impossible to be normal in this world, but he wanted to be normal. The man explains that the marauders who came here, or those who attacked Kaidi, are interfering with that. He explains that in a world where people like them roam free, it's impossible for them to be the same. The girl says that's how it is. She asks if she can ask one more question, to which he replies what it is. The girl says that he said she was his junior. Azami Yanagi reports that there are no more companies and jobs. All of that has disappeared in such a world. The man says nothing has changed and Yuki is his important junior colleague. Yuki is surprised and asks if she's important. The girl explains that she is and says thoughtfully, The man remains silent. Azami Yanagi says that's always the case with him and that it's nothing to worry about. She explains that he just said she's important to him and asks if he can guarantee there won't be any more secrets. She reminds him that he promised that. He says he can't understand why the girl doesn't want him to see her face and explains that he's not going to laugh at her. He says he wants to see her face to understand how she feels. The guy explains that he's already spilled the beans and there won't be any more secrets. The girl then says, okay. The guy says he might not be the senpai she knew. The girl replies that he truly does. The man explains that he knows in his head that in this world, the normality the guy spoke of is different. Azami Yanagi says she feels the same way about normalcy and asks what the girl means in the second part. The girl explains that she still feels like senpai is senpai, but it's just that. She adds that there's nothing special about it but sighs and says, but. The girl is glad that they talked like that and honestly says that she hasn't fully figured out her feelings yet. The woman says there's no longer a need to leave silently and hide anything. She explains that if anything happens, you need to consult with her because she's an important junior colleague. The girl says that you just need to promise everything and anything else, and Azami Yanagi asks what this is. He says okay, good, and promises. Then he and the girl make a promise to each other, interlocking their little fingers. Azami Yanagi says he can't say it was fun, but he's glad he got to see her smile. The girl says she's glad he got to see her smile and thanks him. He reports that this building is the headquarters of the organization that controls the city. He explains that all important decisions and orders are made here. Azami Yanagi puts on gloves. He says it's time to go. The boy warns his uncle to be careful. He calls the boy by name. Azami Yanagi says everything will be fine, and the boy confirms it. The man places his hand on the boy's head. He remains silent. He reports that since they returned to the mall, he has spent a lot of time with Shu, but they have not had any serious conversations. Azami Yanagi states that he doesn't feel any hostility, but that he might hate him, and honestly says that he thought he was afraid of him. He says that if he had come here earlier and told Oda everything from the very beginning, his father might still be alive. Azami Yanagi says she feels a kind of guilt about it, for the police officers who were hurt or killed, and for Kaide, who was bitten by zombies. He says he thought it was fair, even though Shu didn't think much of it. The next panel shows legs taking a step. Azami Yanagi explains that the girl has nothing to worry about. The girl says she's been wanting to say something for a long time but hasn't been able to, and thanks him. Azami Yanagi places his hand on her head. The girl says thank you for curing Kaide's sister, and thanks her for saving everyone, including Yuki's sister. He explains that such a young child has already accepted her father's death and is trying to cope with it, which is not everyone's strength, and explains that what Shu. Azami Yanagi says the interlocutor is strong. The girl says, joke. He says he's going and asks her to look after his sisters. Azami Yanagi says he can't believe this happened and says he's not going to give up. The woman says she's leaving, and the guy says he understands. The image does not contain speech bubbles or text. There are no characters, and only a residential building is shown. Azami Yanagi reports that after this, he checked several places besides the bases, just in case, for example, the Parliament building and other important facilities nearby, but the situation was similar everywhere. The man wonders if the country's high-ranking officials were able to evacuate to safety under such conditions. He says he hasn't yet explored the direction opposite to where he met Takaru and Momo, and says he might take a little rest and head there. Azami Yanagi says he can't understand why the girl doesn't want to talk to him, since he's always been honest and open with her. He explains that he's not going to give up and will wait until she decides to talk to him. He reports hearing gunshots. Azami Yanagi looks at a group of people walking down the street. The top panel shows people walking down the street. Then a burst of automatic fire from a machine gun is heard. People are then shown being struck by gunfire. A man with a gun looks ahead. He stands with a girl, holding a knife and protecting her from those around him. Azami Yanagi talks about the self-defense forces. He stabs a man in the neck with a knife. The guy says, "Come here." The girl screams, "Ha!" And the man with wounds on his neck is silent. In the top panel on the right, a boy and a girl are trying to escape. The boy says it's a man escaping. In the middle panel on the left, several people are running toward a building with broken windows. In the bottom panel on the right, Azami Yanagi is reaching for a sword, and in the bottom panel on the left, he's grabbing the hilt of a sword. He reports that they took refuge on the second floor of this house, explaining that this is a sense of perception. Azami Yanagi breaks a window. The man tries to open the door, but it won't budge. The zombies' movements as they climb stairs are reported to be slow. Using the stairs for protection is a smart move, but it also cuts off their escape routes. He takes up a sword. Azami Yanagi says it's time to clean up a bit. Several zombies come up the stairs and start knocking on the door. The girl looks fearfully at the man knocking on the bookshelf. The man says, then turns sharply and notices something, expressing surprise. The man explains that something strange is happening and begins to move the bookshelf. The man asks if they are alive and says that he has dealt with everyone, but asks if he can come in. The guy asks if Azami Yanagi is alive. Azami Yanagi replies that you can say that, then says to wait a bit and starts moving towards the shelf with books, after which the door opens and Azami Yanagi appears. The guy asks if he can come in. The man says yes. He says he's dealt with all the infected outside. The man asks what's up with the infected outside. Azami Yanagi asks if they're hurt and thanks them for saving him. The man says he's fortunately uninjured and expresses his deep gratitude. The man asks why Azami Yanagi risked his life by coming here, and Azami Yanagi explains he simply happened to be nearby. He says he was looking for self-defense forces. The man reacts with surprise. The boy explains that he's a survivor from a destroyed squad and is afraid of not living up to expectations. Azami Yanagi asks if that means he is. The man says, sorry, they saved them, but he reports that they were defending a base further inland. But a massive influx of infected recently infiltrated it, and the defense line collapsed before they could devise an evacuation plan. The girl reports that her squad mates, except for the girl, were working with the refugees and were heading to a base on the coast, but their car broke down along the way and they were pursued by zombies. The man says that's understandable. The boy explains that even if they ask for help or support, the man says he can't do anything now and doesn't even know if the base is still intact. Azami Yanagi says it's understandable. He says he has a proposition. The man explains that, by a happy coincidence, their goals align and asks if they would like to work together to reach that base. The girl remains silent, and the man looks at her. Natsukawa Tsuneyuki says he is, and the girl asks who it is. Matsuba Nanoha says she's glad to meet her uncle. The girl says it's headache medicine and asks her to take it. Azami Yanagi looks at her. The man says his name is Inagi Azami, and he says he's glad to meet you. Azami Yanagi reports that panic has erupted in the city due to a zombie attack, explaining that people are trying to escape and protect themselves. The man explains that the situation is spiraling out of control and warns of the need for immediate action. He says he has no intention of giving up and will fight to the end. The man says he understands Azami's determination and that they are ready to help him. The girl explains that they, too, have no intention of retreating and will support Azami. The girl says the guy is cool and swung a katana, hitting and hitting. Azami Yanagi says it's nothing special, so whatever. The man says that with such skill, he should be known in these circles and notes his modesty. He reports that these are skills that he acquired after all this began. Azami Yanagi tells Natsukawa to take it and explains that it has a big gun with no bullets, right? The man thanks her and asks how he is doing. He silently looks forward. The girl says she has her own but hasn't needed it yet, and the man confirms this. The man with the gun explains that the man is Natsukawa. Azami Yanagi says that's too careless. The man explains that even when they first met in that house, when he had just pulled out a gun. He reports that for someone who was rescued, there's too little hostility or wariness in this world, and that's somehow strange. The man asks if they've encountered any other survivors since leaving the base. The guy reports that they only encountered a community of about 20 people once. The girl says it was a community gathered at a school, people of different ages and genders, and that they were warmly welcomed. The guy explains that they helped there for several days, preparing, and promised to return as soon as. Azami Yanagi asks if they were thinking about staying there. The man says that he wanted Nanoha to stay. He says he has a mission to get to that base. The girl says it's cruel, and reminds him that he said he would leave her. He explains that it's just his official zeal. Azami Yanagi explains that she didn't want to be abandoned, cried nonstop, and he couldn't just leave. The girl tells him not to say she cried. The boy remains silent. The girl explains that for someone who has been saved, the fear of abandonment is very important. The girl explains that for Nanoha, this person, Natsukawa, must be very important. The girl explains that thanks to Kaze, she now understands a little. Azami Yanagi says it's cruel. He also says it could be true. The girl says it's true. He says they need to make sure the base is in order and suggests they eat first. The man agrees and apologizes, and the girl also confirms her agreement. The man explains that his low vigilance towards other people is most likely due to the fact that he hasn't yet encountered human malice, and Azami Yanagi says that if they've only met kind people since leaving the base, it's no wonder he's like that. The man starts to speak, but pauses. The guy asks why he's looking for the self-defense forces and says that he too wants to quickly take back the people who helped them. He explains that there's a community he wants to save, and in short, it's probably the same as Natsukawa's. Azami Yanagi reports that there is only one bridge in the area and explains that if it collapses, all routes will be blocked. He says then, let's get down to business. The man says he can't die because he's already dead and explains that his body doesn't obey the laws of the living. The girl says that's impossible. Azami Yanagi says that since the man decided to come with him, he should at least be a little wary and reminds him that he said he would deal with everyone, but the man apologizes. Azami Yanagi asks the man next to Nanoha if he's yawning. He says, "Nanoha, I'm sorry," and urges her to get it together already. The guy explains that he's just getting a car for transportation and offers to stay and wait, but the man apologizes. The girl thanks Azami Yanagi. The man says that no matter how strong Yanagi is, he can't force an ordinary person to take risks, and that he himself can't sit in safety. The man reports that it is T4. Azami Yanagi says this car isn't suitable either, and finding a car with the keys isn't so easy. The man asks if he should start the car directly. Azami Yanagi explains that's even more of a hassle and suggests they keep looking. The man agrees. The guy expresses bewilderment. He looks silently. Azami Yanagi says it's time to get out of here. The man and woman notice a car approaching, and the man reports it. He says that they are only the survivors. The man replies that he is faster, and he objects. In the top right panel, a man announces they're approaching and asks if everything is okay. In the top left panel, Azami Yanagi says, "Ta." In the bottom panel, a woman invites them in. He says that it is not necessary. The man says, the guy tells Yanagi that they need to accept their offer for now and regroup. Then he shouts faster. Yanagi remains silent. The man reports this. The man asks Natsukawa if he contacted the main self-defense forces. Natsukawa apologizes and says, "No, it's okay, everything is fine." A man in a hat radios in that he's found survivors, 2 men and a girl, and asks if they can hear him. A man with dark hair asks for Azami Yanagi, who explains that they just met by chance. Azami Yanagi says it's impossible for him to actually. He asks Nanoha how old she is. Nanoha replies 11. He says she's so energetic and asks if she's in 5th or 6th grade. Nanoha replies 6th. The man explains that Natsukawa isn't the girl's father and apologizes that the topic is a bit complicated. The woman explains that she owes him an apology. The girl is silent. Azami Yanagi announces an ellipsis. The man smiles and says he forgives the young man with a smile. A car enters a building with a sign reading VELES. Azami Yanagi says there are electric blinds here. The man adds that for such an old building, there are still solar panels. The man adds that the location is not bad. The woman says that before entering the shelter on the 2nd floor, just in case, you need to hand over your weapons and undergo a short search. The man apologizes and says, "Oh." Azami Yanagi announces that he is home. The man with the gun remains silent, and Azami Yanagi slowly approaches with a sword. Several men watch the scene. He reports that everyone has arrived safely and we can breathe a sigh of relief, and then he says, "So." The man says that now that they have caught their breath a little, he will tell Natsukawa and Yanagi directly. Azami Yanagi says he offers to become their comrades. The man says that, frankly, it's hard to survive in this world and offers to cooperate. He says, "Of course, yes, as comrades." The man clarifies that he specifically means comrades. The man says he's willing to help as much as he can, but warns there are some limitations. Azami Yanagi says it's great. He wants to ask if these comrades are all who are here now. The man replies that, in general, yes. Another man turns to him with a question. Azami Yanagi remains silent. The man says that there are a few of them, so it's difficult, and asks why Azami Yanagi is interested. He says it's just a hunch. The man says he's lying. The text says that Nanoha Natsukawa and 7 young men are in this room. Several more weak life signals are reported from the upper floors. Azami Yanagi asks what the signals are and clarifies if comrades means everyone here. The man says it's not free. The man explains that if you join, it will be incredibly reliable. The man explains that Natsukawa is a self-defense specialist and Yanagi is a master. The man says that in a world like this, nothing is free and laughs. The woman explains that it's quite safe here, there's plenty of food, and besides, the woman announces that they have several women. The man and the girl listen. The girl squeezes the man's hand. Azami Yanagi says it's clear, so that's it. The man says it's a good offer and asks how the girl feels. He says he's lucky to have found such a sweet girl like Nanoha, and she's also alive. Azami Yanagi says this would have been unthinkable before the pandemic and is simply an incredible stroke of luck. A man calls out to Natsukawa, asking what he's doing. Natsukawa reveals his name. The man reports that Natsukawa seems very angry and asks him what he thinks. He explains that they just met, so he has no attachments to him. Azami Yanagi says he can't afford to be weak because he has a family. The man says he can't afford to be weak either because he has a daughter. He says he wants to ask 2 questions just in case, and asks what they are. The man agrees. He explains that the first question concerns whether, when they say they have multiple women, that means Nanoha will be included in this and made a plaything. The woman says that's exactly it, and that it's a good offer. Azami Yanagi says the second option is purely hypothetical, and asks what will happen if he refuses to become their comrade. The man with the gun explains that, naturally, he'll have to die. The guy says that especially Natsukawa, since he is from self-defense, although it seems he is not in contact with them, so this is reassuring. Azami Yanagi explains that he understands and says that's fine then. He says that since that's the case, he won't have to hold back, activating his intimidation skill. The man and the girl react with fear. Azami Yanagi points his gun at the man and shoots him in the head. The man is surprised. He says that he is. The man reports that he is a